Pledge of Allegiance. Councilwoman Karumba, could you lead us in the pledge, please?
I will. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Karumba.
Here.
Councilman DeWitt.
Here.
Councilwoman Carr.
Here.
Mayor Simmons.
Here.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Here.
Councilman Forbes.
Great. Well, good evening, everybody, and a little different format here, or seating arrangement, I guess I should say. So thanks for being here. We're going to start with public comment. Members of the public that would like to speak, there's a microphone right over here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Jude Richvale from Bonita. I'd like to address several points today. One is the tiki hut for the fire district. I'm fortunate enough to have two small tiki huts, so I know something about the matter. I think it should cost about $12,000 to build, more or less. I may be a little off on that, but what you also have to consider is that you have to refetch it once every 4 years. So that's at a cost of maybe about $2,000 to $3,000. Also, you want to consider it would fit in nicely with the beach, nice atmosphere, but in case of a hurricane, if a tree falls on it, that could be the end of the fire truck. So I don't know. There are pros and cons to it. Another possible approach, possibly a better approach, might be a small geodesic dome, which would be invulnerable to a hurricane. It's up to you, Council, you can think about it. I'd like to discuss the prioritization of city items. I think one of your priorities as a council at this point should be Bonita Springs Utilities. They're the largest organization within Bonita financially and the least transparent. They don't even obey their own 617 rules, let alone the public records law, which I believe they are subject to. This is something you should take a look at. At a city council, you're told by Attorney Cloud that you have the right to regulate them. And the first step in such regulation might be imposing the public records law upon them, which you can do very readily. It would be a great step. Transparency is never wrong. And lastly, I'd like to address the issue of the improved efficiency of the city council. In 2007, as chairman of the Communications Advisory Board, I suggested a method whereby members of boards could communicate via email legally between sessions. And I proposed that method. It was taken up by the editor of Naples Daily News at the time, who printed my whole idea verbatim in his weekly opinion column. A year later, it was taken up by the Attorney General for the city of Delray, an opinion for the city of Delray. He okayed something basically along the same lines that I proposed. We could easily get that going. I could put together something for you to send to the Attorney General for Attorney General opinion, and you could then start communicating freely via email, and that would actually eliminate the need for such collegial boards and workshops such as this, because you could communicate during off time. Again, something to consider, and it would also make your city council meetings more efficient on their own, again, because you would have prepped. People could inform each other before the meeting. They could discuss things and so forth. If you want to know more about it, you know where I am. Have a good day.
Great. Thank you, Jude. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to item 5, and this is to consider for approval the fire district's request for a modified plan for the structure to cover equipment at Station 27, Little Hickory Boulevard, related to Special Condition 9 in the zoning ordinance number 16-06, and this is green sheet number 1805-0143. Harleen?
Mayor, you have before you the item that was at our last council meeting. It was requested that we bring this as your first agenda item. I believe you've got members of the Fire Commission here as well as Chief Daigle. He also asked us in the beginning of the meeting to hand out some additional photographs and a copy of their lease agreement with the owner of the property as well.
Okay. Council, what's your pleasure?
I say vote to approve.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve and a second. Is there further discussion?
Yeah, just a little bit, which is to say, because I'm going to vote no, I just want to be clear as to why I'm doing it, that's all. I've got the highest respect for the district. You know, I think it was about a year and a half ago, I reached out to Steve Lohan, asked him if we could have some help with respect to the mural downtown. He hopped right on that. They unanimously approved it. Our fellow councilman here, obviously, is in a position where he clearly went out and got the proper legal guidance with respect to how he could act. So I have nothing but the highest respect there. The reason I'm no is because originally there was nothing that could be put on this site. It was 3 feet wide. We had a variance approved to allow it. And I just think, considering the concerns on the beach, which I know are not unanimous on the beach, different people have different views, it would be nice to have something better, which I think the fire department often does. But just want to make that comment. I think I'm in a minority. It's fine by me. But I just wanted to give it that context.
Right.
So thanks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the chief and I spoke about this a couple weeks ago now, and I just, you know, at the last meeting I said, you know, we got a 99-year decision here. Have we exhausted all possibilities? And there again, highest of respect for the fire board. Absolutely, Greg, you wear a lot of hats. You're doing a phenomenal job. I guess my point on this, probably quite a bit different than yours, Peter, but why I will be voting no on this is we had a high school that we were told had to be built in the DRGR. There were no alternatives. We better hurry up and say yes. Otherwise, the high school's going to go away. It's going to go to Lehigh Acres. Then we did the dance out in front of Fred's neighborhood, and then we finally got the high school to where it's going to be. We had a gun to our head that we had to approve a homeless shelter just south of the Bonita Springs Charter School on Old 41. We're going to go to court. The world's going to end. We defeated that and kept the school intact. I know there's been a lot of work done here. I don't want to minimize that, but I don't believe we've exhausted all remedies. I don't believe we've exhausted all avenues. I don't believe that there couldn't be something different done. Having said that, I'll be with you in the minority. And is there other comment? There's been a motion and a second.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Fred.
Well, mine's very simple, and that is, my understanding is that because they don't own the building and they don't know what's going to happen to the building in the future, they don't want to put a lot of money into this, and that's why the tiki concept was proposed. But it's coming down that we got two choices. We can, if we do nothing, and by the way, that vote to give them those variances was unanimous, other than Greg abstained.
Right.
He didn't have to, it turned out, but he did. So there wasn't, the way it is now, if they don't build the tiki hut, you're going to be looking at the fire truck, and I think the fire truck looks worse sitting there than the building that you're proposing. Would I like something better? Yeah. But I think if it's between the two, I'd rather see the building there than see the fire truck. And I would think most of the people that live out there would feel the same way. Maybe not.
Okay. Other comments?
No, I just echo kind of Fred's sentiment. I mean, we voted a year and a half ago to give the variance, with the only stipulation as to what it's going to look like when we put it there. And with that, we need to look at it fiduciarily also at the fire departments. The commissioners, the Board of Commissioners at the fire department have to look at it same way we do for everything that we do here, looking at it as a taxpayer. So to put, the biggest and the best thing on there, the $200,000 one, just is not fiscally responsible for something that we don't own. So with that being said, something's got to go there. We've got the variance for it. This council has the right to say what it is, but it's going to be something. But this is the most economical thing to put there right now. And I think we need to do our due diligence. I mean, it's been a year and a half in the waiting. You know, it's not something that we've rushed to do and they've rushed to do. We've been waiting for a year and a half to make this decision, so I think it's time.
Other members of the council? Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
No.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Nope.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Okay, very good. We're going to move on now to item 6, which is a discussion and prioritization of potential city council objectives. Absolutely, guys.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good night. See you later. See you.
I'm supposed to sort of orchestrate this, and I've already given you some preliminary suggestions about why I thought this would be a good thing for us to get together. I mean, we've done this 2 years ago, but so many things have changed in the city that I think we need to rethink it. And I haven't heard from anybody that there was anything that they wanted to add to this, so we should just look at what we have. And let me just explain the two different sort of groups that I have, A and B. B, I had originally had as objectives, where I have having to do basically the emergency, and the other one is the community development. And then I thought, well, these are both projects that we are kind of in the middle of already doing, and I didn't feel like that they were that complicated in the sense of what would have to be done to execute those projects. So I downgraded them somewhat to a task, but I think those two are, in my view, are very important. So, and then again, each of the ones, the titles of everything are sort of what we would have as the objectives. And I put some suggestions under there just to get our minds stimulated to think that these are the kinds of things that we might have to pursue or to figure out. And I would rely upon staff, if we choose any of these things, to come back and fill them out and give us some structure for what we're going to do with them. But I think we can still look at them and say, we think this one's the most important and this is the second most important. And that's what I think we should have to do there. So does anybody want to hop in here and say, I think, you know, we should do this one first? I put them in my order. This is my order. Now, it doesn't have to, if somebody wants to do it some other way, just give me a reason and we can talk about it.
No, I would say go in order. I mean, that way we're not hopping around and
Yeah.
skipping around, and then we end up either A, getting tired at the end of it all and miss something. At least this way, we
Okay.
can systematically cross it
Okay.
off the list.
All right, so
But
again.
this is obviously the most important, stormwater.
Stormwater, I mean, I think it's for me, so if
Right.
anybody objects to that, pop in now, and then you want to redo these other things, that's fine with me too, but these are my order.
So you're not looking to develop a strategy tonight?
No,
You just want to check the
absolutely
box and
not.
say this is the priority?
Yeah. Is there anything here that you think is missing or that you want to rearrange? Because once we give these objectives to the staff, that's where they're supposed to do their major effort in there.
So strategy has subsumed in it Water Management District, Lee County, Tallahassee.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And then the staff would have to come back and say, in order to do these things have to be accomplished, and this is how we're going to do it, this is what the staff's going to do, this is what the
Schedule.
council needs help with us, and, and the votes that will have to be taken in the future, and how we integrate with the grants, all that stuff will be fleshed out.
No fun.
And I think the second one is obvious too, to me.
I think one of the things, I mean, on there is, I know it's probably in no particular order, but the review and inspection of neighborhood management system and maintenance, I think that is, high on the list because we already have some type of flood, drainage system in here, but is it being maintained? And I know, let's use my district with IBE, one of the harder hit ones. At one time, I think there were, let's call it culverts underneath the roads, and they've been filled in over time. And I think that may lend to some of the issues that we're seeing in some of these older neighborhoods that haven't been maintained. I know I've been in my house since '97, and it's got a culvert, and my neighborhood's been around since in the mid-'90s, and the maintenance needs to be there now. Again, that can be something either on the city, or at least we need to put it out to either the homeowners association if they have one, or at least the homeowners. Hey, make sure you're cleaning up your ditch. In my opinion, it's no different than what we do as a fire district during the dry seasons. We go out to San Carlos Estates. Hey, make sure you've got all the brush from around your house cleaned up. Because if we get a fire, it's gonna come right up to the edge of your house. And I think either A, education, and or B, maintenance through Public Works, and I know it's leaning a lot on Matt, but he's gonna have to tell us what he needs.
Well, I was going to just ask Arlene, because I recall that we had been told that the city was going to review things like that, and first of all, determine who had the responsibility for all these little different things. I don't know if we ever generated that list. I mean, that was the last I heard of it.
I know I talked to Matt a couple
Yeah.
days ago, because there are some issues going in a couple of neighborhoods in my district, and they are out doing that now.
And I talked to him today,
Yeah,
it's
so I know
coincidentally.
he's out doing it.
So sometime before the hurricane, I think we definitely, but that would go in there. But again,
Yes.
here we're solving the problem, which we said we weren't going to do, but I...
No, I'm just saying,
No,
I know
totally
that it's
agree.
not in any order, but I think letting staff know that
Move
that
up.
should be a,
But once these are, we agree that this is what we want to do, then I would suggest that individual council people who have these kinds of action items or ideas should, shoot them to Arlene. And then when
Gotcha.
she comes back to us and say, this is our project that we're going to
Gotcha.
define to accomplish what you're saying, is there anything we're missing or you don't think that's important? So that's where I would see that come back
Gotcha.
to us.
I understand.
How about transportation? Do you think that's okay for second? Does anybody?
I would say so, because it was our old first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct, right.
And traffic's not getting any,
Yeah. And again, I'd like to discuss, because I think the others are kind of obvious too, but the one that I think might be should be a little higher up on the road is the strengthening the city finances, because I do think that it's different now than what it was 2 years ago when I got on the council, and not because we've been profligate or anything, because we've been hit with some kinds of things here. And I think that we have to, first of all, understand the finances from an ability to execute any of our projects a little bit more. So I wouldn't be against moving that up a little higher.
Funding strategy?
Yeah, well, just the whole thing. First of all, getting a report of,
Oh, the whole thing.
strengthening the city
Oh, okay.
finances, and then including funding strategy, because I'm concerned that I think we talked about that there could be a serious problem here that we need to understand as we consider proposals that might come before us. But we could leave it down as 5 if you want.
well, I guess my question is when do we want to discuss these as individual items? Because, I mean, I have a somewhat of strong opinion on this, and I don't know if it's now or if it's when we start talking about the budget. Because, a little bit, Ann's going to let us know how we look financially, but I just know, or I feel, I don't know, that the 2 years that I've been on, we've not concentrated solely a lot on what's called infrastructure, whether it's building infrastructure, whether it's vehicle infrastructure, those types of infrastructure. And I think that we're going to continue to see those diminish if we don't do something about it. Then down the road, when maybe we're not on the council, they're going to get hit with a big bill that, the rec center needs X, or we need more vehicles, or we need this. And on the same token, and I think Ann will tell us this, I know at the fire department, we still haven't gotten anything back from FEMA. So we're getting ready to go into the budget thing. We're going to have to budget for, the emergency disaster fund. And it's going to be a,
Well, I think that's the point I'm making.
It's
is
gonna
that
be
There's
a,
a lot of holes there that weren't there in the past that we didn't have to deal with in our last budget. So we might ask staff to sort of give us a better picture and suggestions about what.
and I guess that's my question.
Yeah.
When do we want to discuss it today, or do we want to discuss it at our first budget workshop with Ann and say, give us a better picture instead of just
When
a
do we
broad-
have our first place? July?
It's in July, but we were going to suggest if you would like, bringing back before the
Right.
council meeting, before the evening one in June, is maybe to do an overview of
Right.
what we're looking at. And
Excellent
maybe
idea.
at 4 o'clock would be a
Excellent idea.
recommendation.
I just got a quick question. I know it puts a lot on staff, and like I said, I know enough to be dangerous. That in June we get this, we call at the fire department the soft numbers, the preliminary numbers. Can in June you guys give us like right now we don't have any picture of what's going on. June we'll have clear, maybe a little blurry, but a mostly clear picture on what we're going to get it for ad valorem. Could we do that in that meeting you're talking about, Arlene?
I think so,
Kind of give
yes.
us a brief overview, because historically, with the numbers you get in June, other than when the recession hit, they've always either stayed the same or gotten better. So,
And I think one point that both Amy and
Fred,
Greg-
you're on deck.
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead,
Yeah.
Greg.
No, all I was going to say is I think it's safe to say that if we had another disaster, we would have to go to a bank to borrow the money to pay the FEMA reimbursement money. That's how bad it is in a nutshell. And I think that I said that at a couple meetings ago.
Right.
We get in that budget workshop, the worst thing we could do is to set a trim that's, even if it's 20 cents more than it is now, till we really understand this, because we ought to set a big trim. Because you can come down, but you can't go up. And I'm conservative, but I don't want to be in a position if we get hit by a disaster, we've got to go to a bank to borrow the money. And if you think about it, if we're that bad off on reserves, we're going to really be scratching jack on any kind of projects we want to do. I mean, that's the reality of it. Most of it's Irma's fault, really. You want to blame it on somebody. So that's my only thought. So I think we're all on the same page. We're just talking slightly different.
So just on the, should we move the strengthening of the city finances or getting reporting, should we move that up to number
That's my
3?
point.
Is that okay with
Yeah,
everybody?
what you might do is temporarily make it number 1. Because
Well-
if we don't have any money, everything else, including flooding and all that, goes to heck in a
Yeah, we
handbasket.
got a lot
Well,
of expenses.
in the past, we typically
Straight
come
up.
up with the priorities, and then we prioritize them at the end. So, I mean, if you just want to go through everything,
Oh,
and then
okay.
at the end, we can say, what do we want as one, what do we want as two?
All right.
I think that's a good idea, Mike, you know what I mean? Because then, let's say 5 subjects down here, we're going to say, oh my goodness, that ought to be, and then it juggles everything
Okay,
else.
well
But
then, you
Let
want
me
to
just
talk
add
about...
just one last point.
What?
Again, similar to Fred, but a little different, which is, we've got this in terms of information we need sooner rather than later. We've got the 5 to 6 million, I forget what it is, hurricane, we call it emergency reserve. I'm assuming that's depleted, don't know for a fact, and we've got to freshen that up. And how the heck is that going to work, you know? So, similar points.
Yeah. I
But
think
all
we're
the
on
more to
same
get
page.
more information, more macro information sooner, not every detail.
No, I think we'll be looking as a high-level look at where we are.
Yeah.
An update on the funds requests that have been submitted, and then a very high level of what the commitments we would be looking to make with the.
Well, like, where are we going to be in ad valorem ballpark? Where are we going to be on impact fees ballpark? Where are we on gas tax ballpark? We know what our other expenses are. We got our reserve. We have to refill that picture, we think. And that'll give us enough to really address Fred's point, I think. So, thanks.
So, community aesthetics. I think this is pretty much continuing what we had done in the past, just combining them in a way. But one thing that is on here that I don't think we've done in the past is to have a review of the city assets, sort of like what you're talking about. Not only the external assets, but things like roofs and things, and identify those that I think Deputy Mayor Flynn had proposed this, and I don't think we really did that, but it was more for the aesthetic of what it looks like to other people,
Right.
not so much there. To just get an inventory of those areas that are looking a little shabby, let's say it, and figure out what we could do about it, if anything. And then again, it doesn't mean we can act on it, but at least we'll know these things would be targeted to have some improvements if it's possible.
Yep.
And that's the only thing that's new on there. And then the next one is environmental protection, which again, we've had it.
Mike, hang on
Oh,
just a
I'm
second.
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
Number
Nope.
3, you had lumped parks in there, which previously was separated from community aesthetics.
I did.
And parks is always kind of like a lumped in, because when we initially talked about it, it was water access and beach access.
Right.
So are we lumping that in with the community aesthetics?
The reason why I put it in there is because that was part of that urban design thing that we
Oh,
had, right?
Yep.
And I don't know if this is not going to work here. That was part of that urban design, and I thought it sort of fit with the whole rest of it, but you think it should be separate?
Well, I don't know if beach and water access goes with urban design.
Oh,
Because that's what it really was. It turned into parks, but when we discussed it, it was beach and water access.
Well, beach and water access should be somewhere separately on this list, whether it's contained or not. And it-
Or
Right,
or
should be.
possibly under
Is it on here?
environmental. We could look for it to be under environmental
Well,
protection.
wherever it is, I think the point is well
Okay.
taken.
Okay, so let's put it down, and we'll let Arlene
Environment.
figure out what to do with it.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments about number 3 before we move on? We have the establish a city icon
They put down there.
and down there too, because that's what we said, we want to do some kind of branding thing, and I think we have some consultants that are working on that. But it would be nice to have it so we can.
yeah, do we have any updates on that, Arlene, or?
So we're looking for DPZ to come to our second meeting in June with their recommendations on their findings. From there, they're going to have future suggested action items, and then we'll need to discuss what of those would be something you'd like us to continue budgeting for. One of those would be the welcome features and accent features and statements, so,
Right.
along with other recommendations.
Great. And then the next one is environmental protection, which, we're always an environmentally interested city, so we don't want to leave that off. But I think one of the most important things there is that the DRGR protection, which I believe we still want to continue as a city
Right.
and as a council. I also listed on there, the use of Florida Forever and 2020 funds, and I think that there's various projects that we have included the interest in doing that. Not even and we would rely on staff to tell us, come back and say, these are these 3 areas we might want to appeal to those entities. I'm not 100% we could do more than one there, but we'd have to evaluate what the alternatives are. I know we just recently got a proposal to use it for something else, so, and then, the environmental thing, we're going to continue to try to nitrogen reduction, and we would get a report there.
And we could add to that the beach and water access
okay,
preservation.
Okay.
And I assume, this is a point we'd like just to clarify, does that include river, or is that an interest as well, river access as well, or do we?
Oh, for sure.
Okay,
Sure. Because I think our study had.
It had
also-
some,
they
but we
had
want to
some
make sure
river
that, I just want to make sure
access,
that that was clear, because we've had some recent proposals. We want to make sure we're.
Okay, and then we're back to 5, and we already talked about that a little bit. Again, I think the long-term strategic evaluation is important. We're going to need a lot of progress with the grant making, so that's all important. And then we're going to have to consider the review of the franchise rates, which we had up this year. I think one of them we could put up one more
Yes.
time, 0.5%? something.
0.5%, I believe.
Was that communications?
Communications.
Yeah, so I mean, that would be something we'd have to talk about. And we have talked about the stormwater utility and the potential fee there. And then here, the review the budget process, what we started to talk about just earlier. We might want to have to do it a different way. So, is there anything you want to add under there?
Good job.
Are there any caveats to the franchise fees? Do they have to be spent a certain way, or is it basically free money?
I'll need to check with Audrey, but I believe there were certain restrictions that it's consistent with what you're using it for. So I think as long as you all voted on the different criteria is what I believe she had set up, but I'll double check with Audrey.
And the 6th is one because again, I've observed that we're very dependent on strengthening our relationships with all what I call the supra governments. Supra,
Right.
which would be the state of Florida, Lee County, Southwest Florida Board of Management, or whatever, well, the MPOs, all that stuff. And it is just an incredible job that needs to be done there. And my view is that once we get our projects going, that we should work on organize in a structured way activity, because the council, I think, God bless the people that did that. I didn't do very much of it myself, but the people that worked on that and just sacrificed themselves to try to make these relationships. And I just think that as a council, it should be a project for the council. And those of us that are willing to help out there and share that burden, I think in the long run, it would be better for the city. So, but it has to be organized, you know, and we can't organize because we can't talk to each other. So,
We had discussed having
Yeah.
a coordinated, consistent message that was both easy for staff to repeat as well as council. So when opportunities for communication happened, we were in the same room, in the same opportunity, we would have the exact same goal and objective, and staff could be continually repeating the goals of the council.
and just personally, I mean, I have occasion to interact with certain people, and when I do that in a casual way, it'd be nice to mention some little something that is relevant to some project that we're working on. So I think that would be helpful for me. So that's why I have it on there.
And what would be helpful for staff is when we're asked questions, we would have the council's position already to be able to answer those with the direction that we've been given.
And I think, picking up on that point, I think it would be a good idea on, let's take the county. Issues like beach parking, shells for landscaping, whatever. That what we do is, and I'm pretty sure we would have a consensus, but I think the intelligent thing to do is have a presentation to council. It doesn't have to be 5 hours long. It could be 10 minutes long. This is our idea. This is where we're pushing. And then get everybody on board. Could be changed as a result of the conversation. But once everybody's on board, that's the policy of the council. And then when any of us, you know, led by the mayor, but when any of us talk to one of the county commissioners, that is, it's not the individual view, it's the view of the entire council. And I think that just makes it much more powerful and coordinated to any audience.
I think that's what we did with the MPO when we were trying to get our project back on there.
Right.
I know Carl came up with a list
Right.
from you and Fred, and that was the unified message I went with when I went and talked to the county.
Exactly.
So I think it's
So
a
there's
great
no mixed signals.
Right.
Well, and we all know the same thing, so Amy's not saying one thing or Mike's
Correct.
saying the other. I think that's a great idea to have a unified message. I mean, as a council, I mean,
Right.
that's what we should have.
Right.
Whether, you
And
know,
what-
we always say that, you know, we may have our own individual opinion of it, but when the decision's made, the decision's made.
Right.
You know, and that's what it should be as a unified council. This is what we want.
And sometimes the response from these people are, let's say, convoluted, you know?
Right.
So we have to be certain that what, you know, they might say, well, so-and-so said blah, blah. Well, and so what are we going to do? Pull you up. Did you say blah, blah? You know? So
Right.
it's better to say, no, the council message is
Exactly.
this. It'll help everybody. And again, the people who did this over the past 2 years deserve a lot of credit, but it's only going to get worse, in my opinion, in the sense of demanding our time. So if we can be efficient and help each other, that's what I'm looking for here.
I don't know if this is too much detail, but I have some topics that we could fill in here on that. Is that too
Okay.
much detail? Or
Sure.
No?
All right, so I have quadrant plan, i.e., we've got, thanks to F.1, we've got the money from the state and the federal government. We don't have county money. So quadrant plan, landscaping on Beach Road, our view with respect to the bridge out in the island, although there seems to be some delay about that, but Lee Tran. By the way, Fred and I were at the MPO talking a little bit about Lee Tran, but I want to get into details here. But Lee Tran, beach parking, and the FEMA grant. What do they call it? The mitigation grant money? Yeah. I'm sure there are more.
LMS. or
LMS,
but
local mitigation
I'm
strategy.
sure there are more, but those are at least 6 county issues. Oh, I guess the other one is, I don't know that we've been asked. I keep reading articles, though, they're going to ask. It's about
the
the
school?
resource officers. No,
Yeah,
have we been asked, Arlene?
Yeah,
Not-
what's
We've been asked in the
happened with
newspaper.
I'm not aware that we
All right,
have gotten any
okay.
formal requests
Okay,
yet.
all right. That's another one. Well,
And
Peter-
I had heard, because we're with the Lee County Sheriff's Office,
Yeah.
that they were going to be doing that, but I don't know. Have you heard anything?
I have not heard, no, I have not heard anything or gotten anything.
And the cities that have their own
Correct.
departments are responsible, but,
As they have been
Right.
in the past.
right,
Yeah.
but don't know that. but have heard that.
Makes sense to me.
Right, yeah, right.
But you know, that's another good reason not to be hasty on this lower trim, because you had another shooting in a school, and what was the way it was yesterday can change tomorrow based on those things, so.
But, yeah, I don't want to get into the substance of it, unless,
Yeah.
because she wants to keep
Right,
going.
I do, I want
All
to
right,
keep
fine.
going.
Okay.
And again, I am relying on staff, I'm sorry, Arlene, to come back and fill this in for us, you know, and to lead us into a fuller discussion so that we sign on to whatever projects the staff say, this is the way we're going to handle it, or this has to be done, and then we're going to say, go for it, and we'll figure out what we can do from there. And the next one is government transparency. Again, this is from our previous objective.
I'm sorry to go back, but
I'm sorry.
it's important. Peter, at some point, we got to think about our initiative for next year for the state.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that, I guess that's subsumed in the state of Florida for state funding. Just want to make sure. And then we have the water management district. So anything that Arlene or staff could add, just like we have now certain items under the county, subsets there would be helpful.
Right, no, absolutely, and I don't know exactly, I want to say September, that might be early, October, but bottom line, we need to hit Tallahassee nanosecond
Right.
run. Even before that.
Right.
I'd say we go up there and
Well, it doesn't
circle around a little bit.
Well, it doesn't start till March this year.
I understand,
So,
but
yeah, by January.
that's the subcommit, no, but I mean, the subcommittees, we need to be
delegation
there,
stuff.
yes,
But-
we need to be there.
But the other thing we need to do is before,
Because I don't think, Fred, I'm sorry, but I don't think we're really, we might be dicing what needs to be 1, 2, 3, and whatever, but please, let's be ready.
oh no, and I'm saying that what we really want to do, and I think you all would agree with this, is once we have these strategies, and we need to have them pretty well figured out by August, September at the latest, we need to go right now to the district.
Yep.
Because they're much more accessible, and then when you're up there in December, January, March, whenever, and you're kind of reminding them of the discussions
Right.
that Greg or the mayor or Peter Flynn or
No,
whoever
that's a very good
had with
point.
them.
Very good
Yeah.
point.
Because you got more time.
You can do
more-
preliminary work, yeah.
They don't
Well-
mind being gang tackled in the office here.
Right,
They-
right.
They like to
mind
take a
it up
break.
there.
Yeah, right.
No, I agree, Fred. That's a good-
Absolutely, and we can discuss that approach. Certainly, I'm ready, willing, and able to do that, but I think there should be others, too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
you could give your, share your experience with us about where you thought there was some holes in our.
Lay it out on the dais and
Where
let them see it.
where the
Yeah, no,
problem-
I know, well, good, no, I know.
Where the problem was and where we can get better, because,
Right.
you had to deal with it, I mean.
Unfortunately, I think the problem came twofold, and Fred and Peter can correct me if I'm wrong. First one is we weren't given all the cards to play with it in the beginning. And then the second one is they didn't tell us, let's be honest here, hurricane hit, and they're like, well, where's your upfront money? Hurricane hit, and they didn't let us know that there was supposed to be upfront money. So going back to Fred and Peter's thing, if we make that decision sooner, we're gonna have to put some money cards on the table come, August, September when we're doing the budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
To go talk to them, when we go talk to them here, it's gonna be, hey, we've allocated this much for these projects. Don't forget that. when we
These
come
are our
see you.
priorities, and here's our 50% match.
Yeah.
We'd also like to add the federal delegation to this list too.
Oh,
because
good idea.
Some of the FEMA
Yes.
opportunities, as well as some of the transportation opportunities we're looking at, is linked to federal delegation.
Very good, yes.
Like the Tiger, yeah, build, whatever they call it.
But we'll also be looking at beyond the round of the LMS, which is locally decided upon. There'll be additional FEMA funding during regular programming schedule that we would do, and probably make sure that we're keeping our federal delegation aware of that.
Yeah, like Greg, the last thing on there was recognize the process imposed by others. I'm not sure that they changed the process in the middle of it. That's part of the problem. But we have to be certain that they have some internal process, and I'm thinking of a certain Lee County Commissioner, that we need to really acknowledge that and try to work with it. Okay, the next one is government transparency, and that was one of our other objectives from this 2016. The first one, I know that we're in the process, I don't know if you're all aware of this, but we had suggested, I had talked to Carl and Arlene, that we get a contact, this came out of the emergency rehash of where we're going to go, to get a contact in every neighborhood in the city.
Right.
And I said I tried to do that in District 1, and it's such an incredibly hard task. It's hard to believe, but people won't talk to you. And they've done, I think you have about 80% done, don't you? Or would you say 80, or maybe more than that? But it's like an actual personal contact with each one of them. Mainly, I was thinking from an emergency point of view, but we could use it as an outreach point of view. So if you have like a manager of a neighborhood, an HOA, and they will respond to us, we can get our messaging out there. It will be that our quarterly letters that come out of the city or something. But I would like to see the completion of that, and then we can incorporate it. Since we have it, we can incorporate it into our emergency response. Because again, what came out of some emergency preparedness meetings that I went to is it's your neighbors that are your first responder, even beyond you, you know.
Well, we
You know,
have that at the fire department.
know.
We have a CERT team. We have different CERT members, like Village Walk has an active
Right.
one. Palmera has an active
Right.
one. Pelican Landing with
Right.
Jim Murphy has an
Right.
active one. So we have about 300
Right.
CERT members and have those captains. And the only, with our side of it is I don't know if we can do it as an outreach, but we can send out emails and stuff. We have those if you want us to help out with
But the
Laura.
CERT teams don't have the connection to the residents of the city. I mean, they're available if there's an emergency, but you can't go out and send messages to the messages because within the community. You can't do that in
No.
Pelican Landing.
Not
We haven't
supposed to.
gotten any messages from the
Right.
CERT team, but we know that it's operating. So you have to get to the manager in
Right.
order to activate that. And I
Yeah, we've never done that.
Yeah.
Just go to Jim Murphy and
Yeah.
say, hey, you're the
Yeah.
CERT captain. Can
No.
you put out this message?
No, they can't put it out. That's the problem. But we need I think that would be a good communication. And then, again, if we want to do outreach, we have to establish a direct, it's not, in my view, enough to just put it on the website, because people don't really, who's going to go on the city website? I mean, unless they had a specific purpose. So somehow, if we could get these connections and people agree to have some very limited communication, we can do our outreach. And then we have,
But why can't we encourage them to go on the website?
we can, but they don't. I mean, I don't think they do. I mean, every time I communicate with my community, I always say, go to the city website. No one has ever gotten back to me and said, I read this on the city website, what is it all about? So I don't know if they ever do it, you know.
I just got a quick question for Laura. I know that all CDDs, and I know Pelican Landings have a couple CDDs, Bonita Bay has CDDs. Is there any way we can interact with the CDDs? You guys don't have a CDD at all?
We're going to grant for, we have a community association, sir.
I'm just saying,
Right.
all CDDs by state statute have to have their own website. I'm just saying, I wonder if we
Yeah,
could
but-
interact with the same message on that
Yeah.
website.
People don't, in fact, I was just to a CDD meeting and nobody even knew how to get on the CDD
Okay.
website.
Never mind.
They did, there was a big discussion. Nobody even knew how to, because we told people to go to the CDD website and they said, oh, how do we do that, you know? So it's still,
Gotcha.
getting people to go to a website who aren't used to doing that, I think is really difficult. But anyway.
But the basic point is a more complete and thorough
Right.
outreach to where people touch information.
Correct.
Okay.
You know, somehow,
And it's different in every community.
and it's different in every community, that's why it's so hard.
Right.
But again, the city has done a surprisingly good job, but we have some holes in there. And then we have the outreach committee mission, and I brought that up because we did have an outreach committee. The purpose of that is to provide a method by which people could interact with city agents, not agencies, but committees and activities in a way. And hopefully we'll continue at least the articulated mission there, which is to all people in the city. So we get to know all the different groups within the city, and we include them in all our activities. We continue to do that. So
Right.
that we need to monitor and make sure it's going in the right direction, I think. And the mayor can talk to that about how he feels that's going after being, how old are you? You've been doing it, what, for how many months, the outreach committee? 4 months, is it? Or more than that?
Yeah, more than that.
Has it been a year already?
I honestly don't have a number of months.
Time flies.
Yeah.
Right before the Festiva last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, right.
Oh,
So it's been close to a year,
A
but
year, okay. And again, just improve our communications with the website, social, I mean, I think it's really hard to do that. And I know we're in the process of doing that, so we have to continue it.
it's one of those things that needs to be done, and needs to be done. I agree that it needs to be done, but that people don't utilize it like they should. You know?
You know, it's always the issue, you can't bring the horse to water. I mean, you can bring the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And this is the whole thing, and this is what you fight against. And
Well, yeah, just as an example, where I live, you're making a very good point, I hadn't really, which is, people are not really going to go on the city website.
No,
They're just
they're
not,
not. They're not.
all right? So I'm not saying we shouldn't have a good website, but they're
Correct.
not, all right? But they do get information from the Bonita Bay Community Association. They do get information from the Bonita Bay
Correct.
Club. They get regular newsletters.
yeah, we do too.
We have, in Bonita Bay now, we had it for a year or two, a government affairs committee. So there is a pipeline on that end that's pretty potent, all right? And so the city's got to plug into that pipeline. And I think it's doable.
But I think that's what Amy's saying is
Yeah.
that it's hard to get in that,
Oh, it's really
get your
hard.
foot in that pipeline.
Well, it depends where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I wouldn't be where I am, I mean. And
But
I know you have a newsletter, you write stuff.
I write it for our
in there, I've
community,
seen it.
and again, I've really slacked off since we had the hurricane, because I sent an updated thing, what I sent to my own community, I sent out to all my list for District 1. And it's not like I think I have a contact in every single neighborhood, but most of them, I would say at least 20 or 30% of them are not a two-way communication, you know, they don't respond to me. And unless you get that two-way communication, it's hard to get the information out there.
Unless you're getting feedback, you don't know.
Exactly.
And some of these, Amy's, it's probably not germane to this conversation, but like, we have community associations, and this is out of our control, not out of our control with the community association, but like Bonita Bay, for example, just switched to Hotwire TV. Well, they don't broadcast the city council meetings anymore, right? So, you know, things like that.
By the way, I talked to Bill Loncar, because they had the same issue now with
Yeah.
Hotwire, but they had in Worthington, and I talked to Chris Corey about it 2 weeks ago.
Right.
To try to get it on. So
Right,
just so
right,
you
yeah,
know.
no, I appreciate that, and I
But
got,
Pelican Landing,
I said Hotwire, let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
And I connected them with Laura, so I.
Oh, you
I
did that too?
I did that too, yeah.
Okay,
well,
fine.
no, Pelican Landing.
We can't talk, but
Right,
here we
well,
are,
I
we're
guess we're
talking, so
proving
we're good,
we
yeah.
don't
No, this is why we want to have
Been
this.
there, done that.
But Pelican
great.
Landing is doing the same thing, because we don't, you know, we have Hotwire, and we've been on Hotwire for over a year, and we've been begging them to get the Channel 98 on there, and they
Talk to
keep,
Bill Loncar.
and they keep
He
saying.
got it done.
You got it done?
Yeah.
We converted to CenturyLink, I guess, 2 years ago.
Oh, but that's with CenturyLink.
Well, it's the same difference, though, I mean,
So what happened was, I went on 90, what's our?
98.
Check, yeah.
Not there.
Yeah.
Oh, so I called CenturyLink and said, what's going on? And they said, well, we can do that. And so I contacted Carl and Arlene, and we got Channel 87, and that's where we get the meetings that are
Right.
happening tonight.
Right.
Because 98's community access for Cablevision,
Yeah.
whatever it's called, to the other one.
So anyway, long story short, keep pushing, because you can get results if you push enough.
Right.
But sometimes it takes time. They weren't exactly fast, but it took 3 months, I think.
No.
3 months?
Well, we've been, in Pelican Landing, we've been trying for a year, and they keep saying they're going to do it.
CenturyLink?
No, it's
No, well,
Hotwire.
it's another one.
Hotwire.
Yeah, but
I
it's
know.
the same
Right.
concept.
Well, yeah, but
I don't know where Hotwire is, but
no, we have the supposedly the liaison to Pelican Landing who
Okay.
talks to them. I mean, he's the one that signed, that got the contract for them, and he hasn't been able to get it. So he's, has a little more pull than I do. But anyway, we'll keep
Now,
continuing.
let us know
to
when
do
you
it.
get it.
But the point, you can always get it on your computer anyway.
Go to the website.
Yeah. Yeah, the website,
Go to the
yeah.
website.
So economic development, and here again, this is just repeating an objective that we had in the past, and these lists down here. One thing that I think is definitely important is the downtown revitalization, and we're going to talk about that later when we get to, I think, the community development. But we just, again, listed some things that need to be done. We definitely need to implement some of the visions and understand what they are, and that's, sort of a work in process. And those are the objectives.
Great.
And then if you go on to the tasks,
Well, do you want to do what Mike suggested now?
okay, so you want to prioritize these? Who wants to suggest a certain priority here?
Gibby, you want to take a first shot at it on the priorities?
Gibby, is that what you call him?
Gibby, yeah,
Gibby?
sorry, yeah, Gibby.
Oh, I didn't know what that meant.
So we're going to use what you have from 1 through 8. right? And so, just so we all know, the old ones were number 1, transportation, 2, parks, which was beach water access, 3 was DRGR, 4 was community aesthetics, 5 was financial stewardship, 6 was government transparency, 7 was environmental protection, 8 was downtown revitalization, and 9 was economic development. So I think we kind of all agree that improved stormwater should be 1, right?
Right.
Okay.
And then our previous one was transportation, so that should probably be
2.
2.
Correct.
I'm okay with them all, but move funding up, I think.
Yeah.
Move the financial up.
Well, what do you think is
Oh,
3?
go ahead. Go, I'm sorry.
What do you think is 3?
Well, I
He's
think,
cheating. He's got the
wouldn't
old
we want environmental protection,
Oh, see.
which is going to be DRGR and beach water access? Wouldn't we want that above the aesthetics?
Yep.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think I'm with Peter. I mean, putting the financial stewardship or number
Yeah.
5,
Yeah.
the new number 5 should be up there because we've been hit. We don't know what we've got funding-wise right now.
Well,
We
should
don't
we
got
make that
much.
one 3? Make that 3 and make
I already said it.
the 4, well, make the 4 4, and where will we put 3?
So I think I heard, stormwater, transportation, financial, strengthening
Yeah,
city finances, and then environmental protection.
that would be 4.
So 5's turning into 3.
So that would be 5?
Yeah.
The aesthetics would be 5?
So are we're prioritizing, the simplest way would be like, where do we spend most of our money? Right? And where are most...
Well, we got that. Stormwater
Okay.
and transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You got that right.
Probably just switch 3 and 5, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, make that 5. All right. And then 6, 7, and 8, like that?
Yeah.
Okay. And, okay. And then Arlene, you'll just flesh this out and
We're
take
going to
another
flesh
look
it out
at
and send it out.
Okay. And then these 2 tasks, which we're sort of in the middle of, I still think we should have like a workshop or a public workshop where we can tell people where we are in revising our emergency preparedness program. And maybe we could get some other people to participate besides just the city staff. I mean, all this stuff that's in here is great, And if anybody wants to put anything else in here, I know Fred had some, I think we have all the ones that you had in there, but if there's anything else that needs to be in here.
No, I think the emergency thing is fine the way it is.
Right, and
The city, I'm doing some things, not as a city, but I may come back to you for a little bit of help. I've got the Elks Lodge, the Eagles,
the
Eagles, and also the VFW, also the 2 churches, and there's one other one I'm thinking. Anyway,
so a bunch of,
I've got them organized. We're meeting, and they're talking about being ready that if we got hit by something like Irma, that instead of having to wait 10 days before the National Guard gets here and Red Cross gets here, they would be able to have soup kitchens and at least all of them cook with bottled gas that have agreed to help. Oh, the Cafe of Life is a good.
Cafe of Life.
Yeah. And 2 of them, actually 3 of them have got generators. So we're really pretty good shape, and we've concluded that Soup Kitchen should be just that. It should not be anything close to like a gourmet meal or fried chicken, all you can eat and all that. It's primarily
Soup and bread.
for people that are adversely affected by the flood, that don't have a quick way to get food, and that would be the whole purpose of it. That doesn't mean that some others won't come in, but they won't go away with a gourmet lunch or whatever, like I like to eat.
Well, I think it's a great idea, and I applaud you for it. I just think you need to contact the sheriff's office with that, because in the time when Irma comes through, civil unrest may come with it. And if you open up one of those churches or something like that, and you get bum rushed with it, because I know city staff and fire department staff and Lee County Sheriff's Office is going to already be taxed. Now to open those things up, you may have to go with private security or something like that.
Yeah, and they did, a couple of them were open right away after Irma. I forget, one of the churches that is not in this deal currently is that Church of the Living Waters, but they were putting out stuff right away, and it's not going to be, but I think Greg's point's a good idea. We should let them know and all that.
The mayor assisted us last time coordinating that with the churches when we opened up the cooling stations. So
Right.
we had
Right.
proper,
I
we had proper
think it
guidance.
needs coordination, because it also needs transfer of information, because no matter where you have these things, somebody's got to know where you get the water and things like
Well,
that.
and it's that, and it's,
And what you
once
can-
the word gets out, nothing's going to stop somebody from another community, another city, whether it's, a North Naples or a city of Fort Myers, to come down here. They hear this is open, and now it becomes a free-for-all. And the mayor was there with us, and Arlene was there. You've seen how busy the sheriff's office were. They were doing 12, 14-hour shifts and coming back to the shelter and sleeping. So it's not like that they were sitting around doing it.
No.
They were busy. Now you add 2 or 3 different other things on there. It just needs to be put out there. We just need to make sure.
They're only going to be open 2 hours.
Yeah.
But anyway, it needs coordination.
Yeah,
That was a very good
definitely.
point. But I think this could be done like in a one-day workshop or something. I mean, would you think we need more time than that?
I think if you had all the players there,
Yeah.
and again, it's going to be, it's hard to put your finger on all of it, because I know I was just talking to Tony and Chris about the communication side of it.
Right.
And then the mayor knows that Saturday we went up there to try and get some stuff done with Roger DeJarlais and FEMA. It was like a 3-hour meeting, and at the end of it all, it was still a hurry up and wait. So it's not there's no silver bullet that, hey, if we do this, then this is going to
No.
fall into play. It's going to be one of those things that's going to
And
take.
I think it's sort of like a staging thing, like there's some 1 or 2 days you do certain things, and then the 3rd and 4th day you do certain things.
Well, and that's it. And to have it all laid out, I
Yeah.
mean, we know how long it took to get the National Guard here. And
Correct.
the problem even on the emergency scene part of it, we had trouble getting sand days before. We ran out of sandbags. Those things, and now you look into it, okay, and again, I applaud Fred for doing it. Where is all this food going to be staged? Do they have the storage capacity to hold this stuff? Is it perishable? Is it not perishable? Those are issues that we have to look into. I know we had, at any given time, we had 20 to 30,000 sandbags. We had the room for that, but we didn't have enough sand. And once the sandbags ran out, we got sand.
You couldn't go to the beach?
Yeah, well, that's what we ended up doing. At the end of it, we couldn't get the sand. We said, hey, here's the bags.
No, but I mean,
Then
I told him he couldn't, we had just renourished the beach,
Well,
leave
then,
it alone.
the funny thing is here's the funny thing about it. Then after the storm was done and when the water finally receded, he's like, hey, can we bring you back the sand? I'm like, take it to the beach.
Yeah, right.
We don't want it. So it's great. It's just, to put it bluntly, sometimes it will be a logistical nightmare to do that.
right. But I think these are things that we can talk about, and I think the residents need to know what we have done and what we are doing, and where we are fixing some shortcomings that were uncovered because of the chaos that was there. Not that we did anything wrong, because we had an incredible task ahead of us, but we've learned things from there, and I think we need to share that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think as a city, you know, during this whole thing, and the mayor will, I think, echo it, and so will Arlene, because we were there, I think we did better than any other city or even the county at this point with the cleanup, with what we did, the communications that we had. We were, you know, out there doing it every day, and with what went on at Quinn and Downs and that whole area, the outpouring of community support we had second to none.
Yeah, no, I just got out of a meeting with somebody earlier today that mentioned it. Now, I won't mention what town they're from, but they said, where was our town? I said, Bonita Springs was all over the news. I mean, as much as we could do better.
Right.
Somehow, I don't know, we did pretty darn well. But having said that, Amy, I understand there's always room for improvement.
Well, and for example, when we finally decided that it would be a good idea to put a dumpster out at the damaged areas that had stuff like Quinn Street, IB, and all that, all the dumpsters were rented out. So that's something, if the city's going to do it, which I think they should, we have to do that like on the get-go. We got to have a bunch of dumpsters reserved so we can get them out. Otherwise, if we want to do it, we can't get them.
Well, I think that's where, again, it takes communication and partnership with either a Waste Pro or whomever it is at that time. Can we have these reserved or on standby? And hopefully they come back, because again, you know, Waste Pro and those guys, probably all their workers left town when they said evacuate.
Right.
I mean, it's easy to say, yeah, we can get it, until you call the driver and he's not there. Same thing with sand. The pits closed up, you know, I think Irma hit on a Saturday. They closed up on Thursday. So no more sand from Thursday on. So those are issues.
The sand pit's evacuating.
Yeah.
Right.
I think related here, we could use or understand better or have a better outreach to individual communities that were hit about where we are with respect to funding or not, where we're not with respect to funding. Got a good chat with Matt today about the area we call South Dean. I'm sure on IB you've been involved, Greg. I think we need, you know, we've been through a lot. We've had a lot of effort, but there's more that has to be done, and I think we better be sure we're outreaching as appropriate to the areas that, I'm not saying we haven't done some, but to make sure we're outreaching as appropriate to the areas that were affected with respect to the reality of where we are, considering where we are with our partners and such.
And then the second one is, well, I forgot I had this third one in here.
Should put these here.
Is it, can we just go on to the second one? Is that all right?
Yeah, we're having a cookie.
Having a cookie? All right. And again, I thought we were sort of in the middle of doing this when I was working on these objectives, and this is to establish and adopt the best practices for community development, the process, the policy, and the procedure. And because of just certain things that have happened lately, I think this is so critical to move on and to finish this, and not to spend 2 years doing it either. And I think, you know, the obvious one is the one that Deputy Mayor O'Flynn pointed out at the last meeting, which is, what the heck do we want to do downtown? How do we integrate this vision and all these other studies that were done? I mean, that's an example. And I have to mention the Cheeky Hut, because I do think that something went wrong there in how we handled that. And I believe that was having to do with the process of community development. So not only do we have to understand, and I know that Larry Kurlander has a view about how the zoning board can be more helpful to us in analyzing applications. And what stuck with me was the statement that he made, and that was reinforced by Theriac, that we vote for speculation and not development. And I think that's happened a number of times, where we grant things to certain projects, it doesn't get done, and then it's sold, and then they don't even deliver on what the dream concept is. So there's something that's not quite right here. And I listed the things, there's probably a lot more here, but I think that for me personally, and actually I've been calling for this for 2 years, so it's not like it's a new thing for me, but it just seems to be creating problems and concerns in my own mind where I can't in comfort make a decision that I really understand how it integrates with the law, first of all, because I don't think we get a good message there a lot of times coming out of the department. And so I think that's really important, but maybe others don't agree with me.
Well, I agree, but that was part of what that whole, Greg, you weren't there, but the workshop that day.
Right.
I thought that was, and certain things came out of that. Fred, do you remember we had, at that meeting, there was a list of things, and it was going to be brought back at the next meeting, and we haven't seen it.
Well, what Theriak said he was going to do was,
So
at
sure.
our meeting, that he was there, but he didn't say anything. He said he was going to make a little stronger recommendation on things like more outreach meetings.
Right, there were 5 or 6 things.
There's 5 or 6 little
Quick
simple
fixes.
things.
Yeah.
And he was there, but I guess maybe he was waiting on us to ask.
Well, what happened was he got dismissed quickly because I think, I read it as being happenstantial, right? Something got, oh, I know what it was. The Terry Street assemblage got pulled
Oh,
from
yeah.
that meeting. And then he was said, you have to stay, and I think none of us thought about, I mean, speaking for myself, oh, wait a minute, there was, so Arlene, maybe you can follow
We'll
up
follow
there.
up with him. And then additionally, there was a smaller subcommittee of the zoning board that
Yeah,
was
and I
getting
saw
together.
I saw it, and
Yeah.
they just sent us an email. They're meeting to review some of those things. Is that what
Yes,
they're
they are.
doing?
The more longer-term one, so there was a set of quick fixes that David Theriak
Right.
recommended that he could
Right.
move on, so we'll follow up with him. But then there was some more longer-term goals that committee, the subcommittee, was going to get together on, and then bring those recommendations back to the zoning board so they could get back to you as well. So they've got their first meeting set up now, Barbara Craig with Larry Kurlander and, I'm trying to remember.
Jim Wooster.
Jim
Jim
Worcester.
Worcester.
The three of
Whoever's
them were
on
going
it.
to meet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fred, did you?
Well,
yeah.
another one of those quick things that, in
Double
fact,
count.
I asked John, I think, about, was we agreed that we would, as a immediate step to reduce flooding or to improve our design requirements, we would immediately adopt, it's
Collier.
either Collier or Naples current things, because they're better than we have. They're already in effect. They've been in effect for years, so we don't have to do anything other than adopt them. It's proven. The experts are not fussing about it and all that. So it's tighter conditions.
Do you have that list,
You
Arlene?
have that?
We'll work
We
on
can
those, yeah.
reconstruct it.
Reconstruct,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't remember that one, but that sounds good.
That sounds right,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was,
There were other ones, too.
everybody
Yes.
liked it.
Yeah.
Right. Double counting was another one, yeah.
But there again, you know, we just can expand this, and I would rely on staff to help that and to expedite that as a project that doesn't have to take 2 years and probably shouldn't take 2 years. Because we're gonna have to make a lot of decisions over the next couple of months for a variety of reasons, and unless we have confidence that the process is one in which we can make an informed decision, I think it makes it very difficult, so. And then the last one is just, I personally, once we get all this stuff together and we get a certain projects, I would like to have it on a list. I guess I'm organized that way. And to know, we're operating in this, we think we might get it done 2 years from now, and then have a little note, we're running into problems. But we don't even have to talk about it. Just go down the list and know that this is what the staff is doing to do these things that we say are important. And you could just do it for me if it isn't too much trouble, but,
Yeah, like, where are you? And
where are you? It's
Yeah.
just basically, we understand what's concrete steps the staff is taking to accomplish our objectives.
Arlene, on that point, I remember, and you would, I'm sure, that Gary had really every action item, he had a chronological list that, I mean, it's just a routine thing that when, for example, take beach parking. You know, I'm just making this up, he didn't, well, he probably did have this, because at that time we had the $5 beach pass from Lee County. But it would be, you know, council met, said this is a priority. Yeah, talk to the county, you know, then talk to the, you know, so
Right.
it basically, but by doing that, it imposed its own regimen
Yeah, and
with
discipline.
respect to keeping the initiative going forward.
Right.
Because, their own progress report.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
like a
something to think about, it's up to you, but, all right. But,
And then you could break it down anyway, I mean, you don't want to spend your whole time,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
it gets a rope.
cataloging what you're doing,
Yeah.
but it seems to me like if you had a project, you'd have to do that anyway. You know, you have to know these are the steps that have to be taken, and have in your own mind, you know, what time frame, so that therefore we don't have to keep asking you, what did you do about those sidewalks across West Terry Street?
And
You know?
what problems you're running into,
Yeah.
and
I was just going to say, so even if it's one of these things where, not to get so drilled down too hard, Fred, but let's say you call the county or you call the state,
Right.
and so-and-so's not calling you back.
Exactly.
Boom,
exactly.
let us know.
Right,
Yeah,
it's on- no, it's on the list.
Right,
and
well,
they'll be
that
sorry.
yeah, right, they will be.
Exactly.
Exactly, okay.
Right. So, again, I don't know how you want to deal with it, but I think, for me, those things are important.
Fred?
No, I was just going to tell everybody here, I don't know, does anybody have any in their district HOAs or developments that face out on I-75 on either east or the west side? I know
Well,
like I do on the...
District 4 does, yeah.
Well,
One does, well, no.
Well, here's the thing, and we had a lot of holes in that fence that separates I-75 from our property, which is FDOT's fence. And I asked LK one day, I said, hey, LK, well, there's all kind of holes. If we send you pictures, will you fix? Oh, we've got a big contract we put out, and just let us know what fences, where they're at, so we took care of. So if anybody has any property in their district that face out, there's odds are that fence, it's in bad shape anyway. And I don't know how you'd know whether Irma did it or whether it was already bad, but,
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
yeah. So they got a contract, so it's not gonna cost us any money.
Okay. And they won't do it on their own, we got to send them the communities?
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
They got
No,
enough work.
Yeah, no, I know, they got a whole state, I get it, but, right.
They're districtless.
Yeah, I'm districtless, exactly, they're like me.
Oh, they are.
They are, and so am I.
You get the whole place.
Right. But, no, that's a great point, and it's just 75?
Well, it
Along
only
75.
affects us, because that's
Maybe
the
we
only...
can do a Google search.
But like
and
if you were
find out
about 95, I
you know,
presume it's the same.
Google Earth and look at it. You're good at Google Earth. I still, you're going to have to give me a lesson, because mine doesn't work that well like yours does.
It's on the website.
Well, but
It's a link on the
do we have an
website.
upgraded Google Earth?
Yeah, sure it is.
Let's use Google Maps.
Do you?
You got to get off
Google.
MapQuest, Amy.
Well, I need a lesson. on
Her and
that.
me
Okay.
both.
I'm done.
I still use MapQuest.
Good job, Amy.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
great.
Thank you very much.
excellent.
Okay.
You want to go into
It's
this?
it's up to you now.
It's up to me, I know it, and I didn't bring my pad, so I've got this here, actually.
Here.
Yeah, let me use that, that's easier than this,
Oh, here,
thanks.
I'll give you this one, actually. That one, I wrote all over that one.
That's all right. Now I know where your head's at.
Okay, go ahead. Go for
Okay.
it.
Look, in this section, we're all looking at it here, but for council improved efficiency and interaction, part of the meeting, items 1 through 11 are Amy's suggestions for discussions on how to work more effectively together. Please offer some other ideas. Included here are some topics where it might be helpful to have the council explore to facilitate collegial action. For example, what do we mean by government light? Do we want to stop right there? Do we want to, talk about government light, or?
I just want, I'll just put it out there real quick. I mean, we keep saying it and we keep saying it, and I agree with it. But then it just seems like over the last, hour and a half, we've been talking, and it seems like we keep saying have staff. You know, we as a group pile on stuff on staff all the time, which is fine. That's their job, but their other job also, first job is to run the city and run it efficiently. Second part of it is to do our bidding, if you will. So I just want us to keep that in mind, that the more projects we want to take on, let's go with Fred's with the soup kitchens and stuff like that, that's going to somewhat fall on Tony and Chris. But Tony and Chris also have jobs to do with neighborhood services to make sure that the aesthetics are looking good, to make sure there's not, grass growing everywhere, and same thing with Nicole. We're going to add more beach parking or these accesses on the river. Well, Nicole already has 21 parks to take care of, plus all that. So I want us to be cognizant of that. I agree with the term government light, but that comes with, it's also got to be council light too with our
Exactly.
ideas and our projects that we want to go forward with, so.
I agree. Well, I never knew what government light was until I got on the council, but this is what it means to me, is that for some of these things, you can have outside contractors do whatever the job is. And that's particularly efficient if they tend to have a relatively short-term time. If it's like a thing that has to go on day after day after day after day, it's not a good idea to do that. But in other communities, that's what they do. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you just load up the staff till they cry uncle. That's not a good way of handling it.
Well, and I think that's what it is when we keep looking at it, and no offense to Peter, we started looking at outsourcing, let's use the legal side of it,
Right.
because it may be more efficient.
You notice two heads snapped there, right?
And that's all I'm saying,
Yeah.
is that, could we sub out the lawn mowing? Sure, I'm sure we could, or the fields, or the lawn mowing of all the parks.
I thought we did do that.
We do some of it,
Yeah.
but also we've gotten reports, or I've gotten reports that the baseball fields are in disarray. Those are things that we've got to look at, that, when there's something to be said about pride and ownership. Somebody that works here and works for the city and that wears that patch on the side of their shirt, they take pride and ownership on it. They care what it looks like, rather than, hey, I gotta go mow the city fields today, and as soon as I get this done, I get to go on break, or I get to go to the next city field, and as soon as it gets done, it's done, and I can go home. Instead of, and that's what I look at with our employees here, the pride and ownership of that. You work for the city, you take that in there. Someone, you're at Publix today, and they're like, hey, did you see the baseball field? Yeah, I mowed it. It looks damn good today. Instead of just like, I work for X, Y, and Z landscaping, we mow that and the medians and City of Palms Park and this and that. They don't take the pride and ownership in it, and I think that's one thing that we have here, just with the longevity of the staff that we have. I mean, we'll use Arlene as one, Nicole and Meg and everybody on the staff, Chris, everybody. Let's look at it. When Frank left, Chris stepped up. I think that's it. So when we say that, there are certain ways that we can do it. We don't have our own paving crew. Matt subs that out because we just don't do it enough.
I thought you did that yourself.
He has done it sometimes. I've seen him out there patching holes. I don't hold that. So that's what it means to me when you say that. So I just want us to be cognizant of it.
Right.
We start piling on, and we still have to remember they still have a job to do, and that's running the city.
Well, I was hopeful that if we came to a concerted agreement in the objectives that we had, and that the staff came back and said, these are the tasks that had to be done, then once we realize the scope of it and the burden that we're placing on the staff, then I agree, that's where the council has to say, we can't do anything more, or we can't ask them to do anything more without pushing something aside. We have to make that decision.
Well, and I think, and no offense to Arlene or Nicole or Ann or Meg or any of them, they're not going to say that. They're going to die trying.
No, but we have to realize what we're at. If they came up with all these things to do, I mean, we realize what it takes.
No, I know. I know the staff that we have. They're going to try their damnedest to make it all work and
No, I
try
can't do that will never be an answer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Ever,
I just
ever.
don't want something else to fall through the cracks or to the wayside because of what we're placing on them, and we're going the government light thought.
I did talk to Carl about this because he raised this point. It's a very good one. And he said that, we do come up with some new projects because something happens and we have to do that. And he said that he found it difficult to come back and say, well, I can't, if this moves up to this position, the rest of this is gonna have to move
Something's
down.
falling
So
off.
we
Right.
need to have that dialogue and give the staff, not the permission, but the courage to come back forward and say, well, you understand this is gonna, these other things are gonna slip a little. We need the dialogue.
And I think that's where, let's go with the word government light. I think that's where if Arlene comes or Ann comes or any of them
Oh, I'm
comes and
sorry.
says, hey,
I'm sorry, Bob.
you've
I didn't.
piled this on us, we need help. That's where we hire temporary help. They
Right.
may not need a full-time
Right.
position to do this. You know, we put this on them and Matt says, all right, I need a couple extra GIS guys to help me map all these culverts that need it, or, you know.
And all those
he-
crack fences along 75.
or we lean on, or Matt then leans on Tony and neighborhood services, and he's saying, hey, man, I'm already strapped. But I can bring in a couple of part-time guys for the next 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and we do that. I think that's where we've got to give them the tenacity to ask this for it and not be, really? We can't hire anybody, we don't have this, or we
I
don't have
think we
that.
ever said that.
I know we haven't, but
Yeah.
I think that's some of the issues that they may be feeling. Like you said, Carl doesn't want to say that because
Right.
then does it make
Well,
him look like an inefficient manager? Go ahead.
Can I take a shot?
Yes, go for it.
All right, fine. I think there are a bunch of things going on here analytically. There's this word, government light, flying around,
Right.
and what do we mean by that? But let me go to the core of what you're addressing, which, forget about government light for a second, which is, we've got aspirations in this city, just like any great organization has aspirations. Here's where we are, this is where we want to get to. And that's what's laid out here and laid out elsewhere, and there are tasks that come with that, all right? And to me, it is management's job not to duck and say, we'll do it all and not giving any feedback. It's management's job to say, like in any organization, we got pressure here, we got pressure there, I gotta tell you, that can't get done by then. That can't be done. You need to come and you need to tell us, Mr. Board of Directors or whatever we are, right? You know, what your priorities are, because here's where, well, the hurricane happened, it took a big bite out of this, so we can't do that. I think that's part of good management, and you know, we're just setting policy and we're saying these are priorities. And I think management should be coming back and saying, I've looked at this thing thoughtfully, or Arlene, have looked at this thing thoughtfully, and we can't do it with these resources, we need more resources. I think that's the way to go forward on that.
I agree.
All right? And then, so that's one point, all right? I think a second point, we're throwing around the word government light, so let me just make an academic point, and I've made this, I think, clearly before, which is, we started out at government light, Estero has 10 people there, all right? They really are doing government light. It's not my view that we can go backwards to where Estero is because of the fact we do have a great staff. But I wouldn't kid ourselves that the original government light methodology that Estero is putting in place or Western Florida is putting in place, that's just being thrown around as a slogan, and that's not by you, but that's one of my concerns here, that somebody says, oh, well, it's a piece of property up in San Carlos, and we should get rid of it because we're government light. Just kind of thrown around, all right? Now, I do think that, sensitive to the fact we do have a good staff, there can be certain things, not everything, where it might make some sense to outsource. It may not make some sense to outsource, but the lawn mowing on 41 is outsourced.
Right.
You know, I mean, so, but I think that's all part of simple, good financial, it's under an umbrella of what's good financial management. That's where I'm coming from, rather than labels. I know this thing got started, oh, I'm a government light and everybody's concerned. They shouldn't be concerned. We have a lot of very good employees here. But it's Arlene's job as the manager, together with her staff, with our policy input, to try to figure out ways to be more efficient. That's all. Just like I'm sure you do with the government, at the fire department.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
Anybody else on government light? Okay. Philosophically, do we support no new taxes, and how does this correlate with expenditure control? Amy?
Well, I put this on because well, first of all, I'm a no tax person. I mean, philosophically, that's where I've come from, but since I've been on the on the council, I think I've sort of changed my mind, because I don't mind keeping the tax rate low as long as we have the ability and the will to have expenditure control. I don't think we should just keep trying to do things by squeezing, the revenue side. So if we're going to say no new taxes or low taxes, we have to balance that by some kind of expenditure control. It just makes sense to me.
And it's one of these yo-yos, Amy,
Yeah.
in a sense, right? Because you keep the millage rate where it is,
Right.
and I'm all for that. I'm going to be very clear on that. But the property values continue to go up. So
Correct.
by keeping the millage rate where it is, we are increasing taxes.
Well, you have a growth in revenue, is what happens. Because you have new people that are contributing to the tax, but
Understood, but then when the property values
Right.
go down,
Right, it goes in
and
the
we
other
keep the millage rate where it is, it goes the other way.
correct.
So we're decreasing taxes.
Well,
And everybody can pick whatever term they want to call it, but that's what it is.
I think there's, sorry, Fred, can I just say this?
No, go ahead.
Thanks. There's a bigger issue, which is where the tax money's going, and I'm just going to leave it at that. And we need to have a coordinated view on council about that, and kind of get our act together on that. Not one individual like sending emails up to Fort Myers or something like that. We have to have a thoughtful conversation about that.
so you're suggesting that we need to concentrate more on the expenditure side?
No, I'm suggesting that there is a large amount of taxes that are paid not to the city of Bonita Springs,
Oh, that's
to
totally-
other organizations that have responsibilities. But I don't want to say that myself, because I started to say that myself, and then the next thing, some stuff's going to Fort Myers.
Okay.
I want the entire council to agree on that. And if we don't agree, then we'll stop bugging the other governments.
No, I agree with that, but there are two issues. One,
Well, that's revenue.
yeah, well, it's revenue, but, and I think we should have a discussion on that. I totally
Right.
agree, and I, at least at this point, without fully exploring it, I agree that we need to address this issue of money going out and then having our requests ignored when they should be supporting us. But this question was brought up more focusing on what we're going to do with our expenditures and our revenues that we get.
Oh, Fred was going to say
All right,
something.
Yeah,
and that's,
Let me take a whack at this. Number one, I agree conceptually with the taxes and watching expense. In fact, I would say that since this council the new council, what would have been April of 16, we've done a very, very good job of watching expenditures. And in this last budget workshop cycle we went through, we went back and actually, thanks to Peter O'Flynn's ideas, we moved everything back to where we were 1 or 1.5 fiscal years before on money. Now, having said that, with all the things we need to do, and in recognition of the fact that you probably aren't going to be as successful with some of these places that you think you should be able to get money from, and Irma, then I see no way that we can stay where we are. Now that we're going to have to exhaust all the different possibilities. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't have a problem with them having a sunset on it, but to get out of the hole that Irma put us into, and put us in two holes. Number one, it wiped out all the reserve in the cabinets, plus got into the regular, what I call the seed money. It wasn't a reserve. So that's gone, and on top of that, thanks to Irma, it's given us a whole new priority on flooding and stormwater management, which we all knew it was important before Irma, but we didn't realize how important, even though we all talked about it, wrote editorials and what do you call it, opinions, all that on it. So now we really need to do something about it, and and it's really interesting. A lot of the communities, I know the mayor's gone through it, I've gone through it, they're expecting to see something happen, even though the budget, the cupboard is pretty bare, and yet I know if we move the rates up, even if it's temporary, they're going to probably complain. But you got two choices. We either do nothing, and that's still not a good answer, because if we have another Irma, we'll still have to probably borrow money to pay those reimbursable FEMA expenses, you know. So that's just it's a different point of view, but I think it's reality, like it or not. No matter where you are on budgets and taxes, we're in a difficult situation. We can cure it, but it's not going to be a painless cure. You know.
I agree. I mean, you know, a year ago, 2 years ago, flooding wasn't on our mind. Now, we've got the city to run as we've done for the last 2 years with the budget we have, and now we've got to add these things on top of it, plus replenish as Fred puts it, the cupboard for just the emergency disaster. So,
And the other thing that's pending is that we're going to make applications to have help, from various entities. They're all going to come with matching funds.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to put that aside before.
Well, that's what I mean.
And we almost are compelled to do that because we can't pay for it 100%. In any of these projects, we need help. So we have to allocate a certain, I don't know how many. It would be interesting to add those numbers up, the 20% here and the 30% there, to see what that's going to have to be an across-the-board expenditure if we're going to apply for those funds.
That's what I mean. Those are something we didn't think about last year.
Plus 6
and
million.
Now, plus the 6 million, and let's be honest. And I piled on Matt a little bit today, but this.
Are you too?
It's all his fault.
Just the stormwater drainage area. The maintenance of them was never on the radar as far as the infrastructure. And now, like Fred said, there's neighborhoods out there, whether it's his, whether it's Worthington, whether it's whomever, that weren't on the radar before. Now they're on the radar, and they expect something to be done on it.
So there's services that we had not provided in the past that have now on the list, and there's kinds of services you can't say no. It's impossible to say no to.
And even let's even go one step further. Even Logan Road. Logan Boulevard. 2 years ago, when we started talking about it, we weren't thinking about a $500,000 box culvert to go underneath, underneath there. But now that's a reality. We need a $500,000 worth of box culvert to go under Beach Road for the drainage.
Well, I would say that, Arlene and Ann are going to come back and actually, Fred's probably right in terms of the reality of what we're going to be told. But we have to be told that reality.
Right.
Yes.
So we have the financial picture. We'll
Yeah.
be able to discuss this a little more.
And again, we're not raising, if we do decide to do it in the picture we get, we're not doing it to put a monument up or to do this. It's for infrastructure and to do what's needed.
Well, if we do anything, we have to have very clear communication about it.
There is one thought to address something Greg was bringing up. When all the development occurs, one of the things that they do, whether it's an individual homeowner building a house, or whether it's a big country club with a couple entrances, or a non-HOA development, they build an access road that goes right over from that public highway, whether it be a county, a city, federal, whatever. They make that access point. When they go over it, as part of that construction of that little road, they put the culvert in. The city's not putting that culvert in, 99, or the county. So why would we not maybe want to say that we could pass an ordinance, say they've got to maintain that culvert, keep it clean? It doesn't cost, one culvert being cleaned out doesn't cost a lot of money, so it's not a big, but for the whole city to go around and clean all these culverts, we're either going to have to hire more people, or it's going to cost us a lot of money. But on a case-by-case basis, most of those culverts aren't that big. That's just a an idea I'm throwing out for
Well, I think
discussion.
it's a great idea. Just the problem is that as the developments, we'll use Bonita Bay as an example, that went from a CDD or its own development, that get turned over to each individual neighborhood in the HOA, where it may get lost in the shuffle.
Well, Pelican Landing does their own stormwater stuff. I mean, they've been cleaning it. That's, I went to the meeting, I heard.
I guess for right now, but I'm just going back, let's look at what happened on Bonita Grand
Right.
two months ago. Hey, we were gonna maintain all those streetlights and the thing, but hey, let's go to the
What-
city now.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Fair point.
Well,
Somewhere along the
That's
line.
another I mean, I think
Yeah.
Bill?
there's so many issues that we could talk about, because that was a concern of mine.
Oh, I know it was.
when-
That's why I bring it up,
When
too.
it was raised, because I didn't understand the circumstances. And we have a similar thing with Pelican Landing, because we accepted, the city accepted Walden Center Drive. And Pelican Landing agreed to take care of the landscaping on either side of that. And I said, well, what if Pelican Landing decide they don't want to do it anymore? I mean, I said, what is the process, I'm not advocating for this, but what is the process by which we would come to the city, and what policy does the city have to either listen to an appeal like that? And Matt did provide, there are some guidelines for things like if you want to pave the roads and things like that, but there's so many things that you make an agreement with a developer to do sort of things where they're going to be responsible for this stuff, and then 10 years down the pike, they change their mind for whatever reason, and they come to the city. Well, what kind of policy do we have? You know, we just do it on a case-by-case basis, or do we have some structure by which we do that? Because every time you take over added responsibility, it's a cost to the city, and as we mature, those added costs will add up, so to speak. So we need, as a council, to consider the alternatives, and when we allow them to come back and change their mind, basically. So that's important.
Right. Anything more on this point? No. Okay. How do we organize our projects so that it becomes more of a team effort? And there was a comment made here earlier about sending each other emails. I don't even know if that's among the...
No, I don't think we could do it.
Yeah, no,
Well, you can send factual.
right.
I
So
met with Joe Schmo.
right.
You can do that.
As you do, Peter.
Right.
I think maybe we all have at some
Yeah.
point just said, do not respond, but just so you know.
Right.
And would that do it? I mean, I know that's helpful to me. I know I can't respond.
I think it would be.
It doesn't matter if I disagree with O'Flynn and think he's crazy,
Right.
right? Or
Right.
likewise, it doesn't matter. At least I know what he's up to and what he's done and what's going on.
just a
right?
factual
Right,
report.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I think.
I like that. You know, colleagues, this is what I
Right.
found out. Don't
Correct.
answer me. Yeah, thought you'd be interested in. And I just, I got to say, the thing that you said to us on smart cities with the
On form-based code.
form-based thing, and if, I don't know if you, I totally recommend you clicking on whatever that
The
city.
individual two cities.
The
yeah.
one that had 300 pages of that. That is fascinating to do that. So I had already seen it, but I thought that kind of thing was really good. But I agree that, and then again, like for example, if we all tend to get involved with certain things because we have a particular interest into it. Sometimes the rest of us are also interested, and in that way, it would be helpful, I think, to the person who takes the lead on that to engage the rest of us so that we could, if it's a larger project, so we could help that person. That's really what I was thinking here.
Maybe one way to do is what we talked about, I saw what Gary used to do for staff. If we have council initiatives, the same thing is done. The only thing I would underscore again is then it's all public record. Anybody can find it. Obviously, that's true. But you made a point on a day, as Peter struck me 2 or 3 meetings ago about a certain person. He said, and he basically implied, I don't want to really do that publicly, and I totally agreed with you. And it's important that if we are dealing with each other and giving each other information, yes, it's public information, but it's understood in the context in which it's given.
Yeah.
That'll help information flow.
I think it's great. I mean, no problems, right? Yeah. Okay, great. Dynamite. Let's do it.
Well, can I just?
Yeah, of course.
If we were so concerned with you know, the taxes, but why aren't we like pushing forward the development side of the the puzzle? You know, we have, well, like Tony's project downtown. Why is it taking so long? Wouldn't that generate money for us?
Well, it doesn't really generate much ad valorem revenue. We only have less than 1 mil, so, but where it brings revenue to the cities in the impact fees, and those can only be used for certain purposes.
Well, but it brings in workers, it brings in people who have
Well,
jobs.
I
and-
challenge the premise. I don't know that we've held up anything
Yeah.
there.
Oh.
However, I totally agree with
But
you.
I'm not, I mean, I just
Right.
name,
No, but I
name that
totally
project.
agree with
but
you. I mean, I give
projects, like-
people a little credit, not you, for like expansion as time goes by, really takes 2 years, it's 10, or that type of thing. But I think that's why I'm pushing, because of my concern about that, not specifically that project.
Yeah, I just-
All right, that's why I'm pushing, let's get our act together downtown. That's why I'm pushing that. And I don't want to go through the whole thing substantively here, that's
Right,
that's
right,
not the
right.
purpose. But we need to streamline that whole process, and we need to streamline, so I agree with that.
So that people aren't held up, and we've got a
Yeah.
playbook, right? Here.
Because, I mean, I'll quote Greg, we tend to kick the can down the road.
Well,
Let's start moving on stuff.
I don't know, we could have a whole discussion.
We can have a
about it.
discussion
I
about
don't
that.
think that's true about that particular project
No,
either.
I mean, again, I shouldn't have
Yeah.
named that specific project, but,
But I do think at least in the downtown area, and we do have it on one of our lists here, is that it is convoluted, the different like the overlay and the study and, the little map and the land development code and the comprehensive plan and how that's all integrated is complicated at best.
And the conversion of commercial to
Yeah,
residential.
there's all, and I don't think that our community development department has totally worked it out in the way that they've made us understand what legally we're supposed to do there. And I think that's why there's a problem. And that's why we need to move forward on what the heck are we doing down here? you
But
know?
we are moving forward.
And that's what I was gonna say, we just need to keep it moving forward, because, you say it's not a lot of money, but if there's 80 units there, which is what it's proposed, I believe, 80 units at $250 apiece, that's about $1.6 million a year in ad valorem. And that's if you did a ballpark of
And that's
250.
reoccurring every year, where impact
I
fees
know.
we're getting once.
We're not saying, I don't want to get into a discussion
No,
about that.
I know, I'm just
I
saying,
mean,
we're not kicking off,
I'm
we
sorry I
just, we
mentioned
need to
this
do it, we
specific
need to do it.
project, but-
To repeat
Right, right.
quickly, I was sitting on that dais when that thing was pulled.
Right.
All right, so
Right.
I don't know what.
No, I'm not saying that we're holding up, I'm just saying, we need to do our due diligence and make sure
Somebody,
that we are.
people have to
What
figure
is-
out their
what is
narratives around
A
here.
million times 0.8 is what?
Yeah,
a law.
huh?
What is it?
It's $80,000.
Yeah, well,
But times 80 of them, it's 1.6 million. If you average 250,000 per unit, times 80 units,
it can't be 86,000. What is
Well,
that?
let's keep going.
Anyway.
it's 80 cents for every 1,000. It's 0.8, it's 0.83.
Well, we don't pay 86,000 on our, 1.6 million? Our taxes.
Why don't we keep going?
Anyway.
We figured the math out before you speak.
I did figure it out, I just did, that's what I was doing.
Where are we, Pete?
Okay.
We don't pay that taxes.
Council procedures and interaction. What suggestions do council members have to expedite meetings?
Stop talking.
Yes, I was going to say, other than us to quit talking.
Agenda management.
And, yep.
I'll make one.
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. No, I
Peter? No. No.
We basically, except on some unusual topic, and we could say we could have one of those per meeting, we go around this table twice, we call the question vote. Because you're not going to, the people here, we're all either A or A plus or A minus personalities. We all have opinions, and if you hear the discussion twice on a topic, I ain't going to change Greg's vote or Peter O'Flynn's or Amy's. I know
So
how
you and
I'm
Greg quit trying, okay?
that's,
Every time I
Right,
look for
right.
Simmons, as I see a hand down there.
yeah. I mean, we all love to debate and all
Right.
that, and.
Dissect
we're
the
all-
dissection.
And dissect it, but truthfully, now I think there could be a topic that would take that 3 to 4 times around, but not literally almost everyone would come to it.
Totally agree.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. And you know, and it was one of these things where last week, and I'll raise my hand, there was a lot of presentations. I'd have to look back at it. I think maybe every one of them was from me, but hallelujah, did not mean for them all to be scheduled on the same week. You know what I mean? So I would just say, what if we were to limit presentations to 2 a week, and I'm open for the number, 1 a week, maybe it's 2 a week, whatever the number is, and they're on a hard 15 or 20 minutes, whatever that is.
I have a little objection.
When there's 6
I
presentations,
have
right?
a concern about
in 1 week.
the nature of the presentations, because I think that the presentations should be relevant to our objectives and the business of the council. And even though some of the presentations are interesting, you know, I was interested to hear about the entrepreneurship program. It wasn't really relevant to the work. And in regard to the other one,
You know, they want to get introduced to the high school, and they want to work with that, but
right, but
it's-
I mean, they could have sent us something about it, or they could
And
have.
is that in our purview?
Or why can't we just like have the presentations done at committees? And then the committee comes back and does a summary, a 10-minute summary. So no
Or
presentations.
they could make a written presentation, and they could pass it around to council, and if we feel we want to have something more substantive, then we could vote at the council. Do you want to do this in a more robust way or not?
You know, if you look at the Lee County Commission, just look at one of their meetings. Bam, bam, bam. Decisions are made. There's not a lot of fluff around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no presentations, and they
Yeah,
do it to committees.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I just go back to the one, I think it was like a half an hour, 45 minutes on the lining of pipes.
Or, I mean,
Yeah, that was bad.
Or the
interesting,
solar
but-
lighting.
Well,
which
it's
was
interesting,
really
and I think
but
we
we don't
all,
need to-
especially
right.
the mayor, gets put in hard positions
he
to
gets,
say,
if they call him up.
well, that's it. He gets called up, or he, go to
Well,
League
this
of
committee idea
Cities,
is a good idea.
whatever. Hey, can I come in and
But
talk to
they-
you guys?
They could have done that in 10 minutes or less.
Well,
Or
even
you're-
that, it's not
or
our,
less.
it's not in our purview. We don't own the pipes. It's, talk to BSU. Go give it to them.
Let me ask, we're talking 2 different things here, I'm pretty sure, but obviously, staff likes to make, like, we've got Bonita Beach Road visioning study, and we have...
That's different.
So right, it's different, but I think we need to be careful when we say no presentations. We need to drill down on what we're getting at here.
What I heard is you're
Why don't
looking-
could I make a proposal?
Yeah.
Why don't anybody that wants to make a presentation, why don't they put a little paragraph summary and submit it to us, and then we can kind of maybe either check mark or something, and if you got to get at least 4 check marks to get it back, and then there could be a little time allocation. You could check 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, unless it's something exceptional that would have to do with like flooding or one of the things on how we're going to get the railroad to give us a right-of-way or be reasonable, something like that.
Or maybe we could have whoever wants to give a presentation, give a written summary of what they're trying to do and give it to staff. And then staff could give us a summary and distribute it to the council. We could do the same kind of voting thing, but they would have to make an effort to the staff. And then the staff would say, this has to do with your number 1 or your number 2, or it doesn't have to do with it.
And that puts Peter in a position where everybody's not hitting on him
Yeah,
constantly.
because I don't know how you
Right,
say,
how you
it's
deal
so
with that.
hard to say
Right.
no.
Yeah, no,
So
I think
this-
that's great.
This way we could,
Yeah.
we could sort of
We can identify for you.
intercede for you, and then you could just sort of give a quick and dirty, and we could all read, hopefully.
I don't have to be the good guy, I don't have to be the
Right,
bad
exactly,
guy. and-
exactly.
Well, you
blame
can always
it
be the
on
good
us.
guy.
Yeah,
you know.
I'll
If the
blame it
answer's
on
yes, you can
Fred
tell
and
yes.
Greg,
You
and
can
then we'll
always
go
be
from
the
there.
good guy, isn't it? You
right.
can say,
Or if she asks, you can
blame
tell yes.
Arlene, we'll blame
No,
her.
but I think
More-
it's, I think
more
it's
work for staff,
fantastic.
but yeah.
So what would you want that to look like, Arlene? Just kind of have them write something up?
So I-
Because what's best for you, I think, is what we want.
I
for
think
that.
we want them
say, I
Yeah.
don't want to load her down now.
No,
She's
no,
not
but what's
listening to it
best,
first.
yeah,
No, to see if it's relevant to us.
I think they should provide it to us in a written format, a summary, and then any subsequent materials they'd like you to see, whether they have previous PowerPoints they'd like you to see, all that should be written. We should have an opportunity to look at it ourselves as staff and determine if it meets one of your priorities. If it does, we would say, Council, this does meet your priority number 4, number 3. Please let us know if you'd like us to take any further action on it. Or we look at it and then we say that we're sorry that we don't see how this is your priority. The information is wonderful. We're passing it on to you. If any of you feel like that you'd like us to take any further action on it, please talk to us. And then if we do hear from one of you that say, hey, you know, Arlene, I think this is something we should look at, even though it doesn't meet our tasks, under city manager items, I can say, we've heard from a council member that this is of interest. Council, would you like us to schedule a presentation for it? That way you all can discuss it in the meeting. But it does take the pressure off of you individually being approached by folks in the community.
And your presentation must be no longer than 10 minutes.
Yeah,
You know,
give them the
we
red
can
light.
all read.
Give them the red light.
And the only thing I'd add to it is, I think you implied it is, if there's another way they can get the information to us,
exactly.
that's good. So it's not like there's a wall. It's
Right,
just
right.
that
Oh,
it happens to
yeah.
do with taking the time at the public meeting. That's
Right.
all.
Well, all of it would be forwarded to you, whether it
Yeah,
was
or they have a
whether it was
video,
centric
whatever
to
they
the-
have.
whatever they have, all the information. The only thing we would do at staff level would determine if it was met one of your criteria, but it would still be moved forward to you to review.
Well, I think the other thing too, whatever is sent to us, especially if it's gonna come to a presentation at the city, at a council meeting, that, just to expedite things, make sure that we have the PowerPoint. They don't have to go through a 60-slide PowerPoint. Hey, you guys have been afforded the PowerPoint. Do you have any questions on it? If so,
Exactly.
I got a question on slide 7. Boom, boom, boom. And let's go over slide 7.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I
Good.
think, personally speaking, I know that the mayor and deputy mayor both have done it, even on staff, when they're presenting a case in a public hearing, you know, a 30-minute long thing on both sides of it when there's no stipulations on any of it. Hey, staff agrees, the applicant agrees, so why are we here for an hour on a presentation when both parties agree?
They've got a presentation and they want to show it.
Well, but that's
Yeah, right,
that's kind of the
No, I
point,
know,
though.
no, exactly the point, right?
That's exactly the point, when both parties
This is
pretty
not
much
America's
agree.
Got Talent.
Yeah, right, America's Got Talent, like, exactly.
All right, you speak well, and you speak well, let's just go.
It sounds like we're in violent agreement. Is everybody
Yeah.
good with that?
Yes.
Okay, dynamite, no, that's great. Any other, you know, this is kind of an open-ended thing here, other suggestions to expedite meetings? And Fred, you've
Well, I
touched
like
on.
Fred's thing,
Yeah?
what he said, totally.
Right.
The only thing I know, we seem like we have a lot of, and they'll come in bunches where we have a lot of organizations coming in to ask for something or read a proclamation, something like that. I don't know if any way we can stream, anything we cut out there is more minutes we have to talk about.
It's kind of funny, I mean, I'll just reminisce for 30 seconds here. Well, it's just one of those things, when I first got on council, it seemed like when we would do a consent agenda, we'd pull 6, 8, 10 things to discuss. And then the hearings were nothing. What, the last 4 or 5 meetings we've had?
Consent agenda looks, is a mile
Boom.
long.
I think it's just to say, hey, I want to talk about this. It's a great thing to do, and consent agenda's done, then it's like, I'm thinking to myself, oh man, we're getting out of here early today.
Lots of luck.
Like the SpongeBob, 4 hours later. We're all-
Just a simple suggestion about the consent agenda. If a lot of times we just want to say, you did a good job for somebody. It's not a negative
No, I know.
bullying.
Yeah.
That we should just say, just leave some time for me to recognize Mr. X.
At the end.
At the end,
Approve
but
it.
we vote it all. Don't pull it to have a discussion, but just to make a comment. So we could
Right.
say, I want to comment on C, but I'm going to vote. And that way, we don't have to do it in 2 times. It's just a small
Roll call
thing.
3 different times
Yeah,
to say.
exactly.
We could put a small note on the agenda that says consent agenda comments, and then right underneath consent agenda, and then
Right.
if someone wants to say
Right,
something.
and then we
they
don't
could.
have to say that, so we could just move it and then do it, and we'll be good.
And on proclamations and presentations, maybe we limit that to 2 a meeting. Or,
There's a little bit different.
Yeah, right, I'm sorry. I'm under-
Proclamations
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
certificates of
Right.
recognition.
Right.
I know it's a little bit different
Yep.
than an actual
And they come in
presentation.
bunches and they come in waves, but
You can knock those out, though.
Right, yeah, you can knock them out, but I
But we can
still
look at
think if...
scheduling of how,
Yeah.
when, sometimes, depending on when they ask us for their time related to that week being celebratory of a
If
certain.
April is such and such month,
Right.
yes, but if it's...
But if not, we can
Yeah.
work to.
And do you have to read the whole thing? I mean, can't
good
you
point.
just say,
Very good
we're giving
point.
this proclamation
That's-
to honor this, and that's it?
Some of those, it's like my tongue is wagging, believe me.
Some of them
So
you're talking
so
about.
we could
Yeah.
do a short statement
Some,
of what,
yeah.
how to recognize them.
Exactly,
And
that
then
would
Right.
be good.
I think that's great too, Mike. That's
Good
dynamite.
idea.
Man, we're just gonna not even have to meet here.
Yeah.
Here
I'll
would be
just
like
text
Lee
you.
County Commission,
I'll
take
just
the whole month of
we can
July
just all
off,
text you,
December off.
Marlene. Yeah, right.
Speaking of meetings,
Yeah, exactly.
have we
Keep it
ever
all for
figured
ourselves.
Tell Ann, all right, Ann, the budget, we'll
have we
text
ever
it in.
figured out what we're doing with July?
What's that, Fred?
Are we gonna have a meeting somewhere around July the 4th, but not on the 4th, or are we?
We
just
decided
about-
not to.
Okay.
Remember?
Yeah, it was only if something came up and it was necessary,
Okay.
but I don't think anything's come up, so.
Right.
Yeah, we still got 2 more meetings.
Yep.
June, all of
Right.
June.
Not to suggest for a second we would change anything, but there are a lot of governments that take July off and/or half of August, so don't
if we
feel
keep-
guilty for missing the 4th of July, Fred.
And last summer, what we did, I thought was good, was try to keep the summer agendas light.
Right, right.
Try.
Lots of luck.
Well,
Okay, any other for expediting meetings?
How about you, Mayor? You have to run.
No, I think, well,
Yeah.
look, I mean, I love you all, but
But-
you don't have to dissect the dissection.
there you go.
Okay. All right.
Fair enough?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Fred and Greg leave each other alone. Gibby and Amy lay off each other, and, Lauren, Peter, no, I mean,
I don't think Mike's.
well, no, I mean, look, I mean, Tad's here. If he wants a quote, we don't have to give him the quote by dissecting the dissection.
Right.
If he wants to talk to us, he'll get a hold of us.
Right.
Right? So, other than that, I mean, I need to remind myself of that, because let's face it, there are items where you're passionate. I get that. I totally get it. But we're gonna know after your first statement where you stand. And I would hate to, I like the free flowing. Let's be more cognizant, please, of the interruptions. Everybody does it because it's a dialogue, right? And it's how we talk at home. We don't wait until our spouse is done talking to jump in, or at least I don't, so I can't, or our children, or anybody, so. But I like that atmosphere. I don't want to have to raise your hand, wait till Fred's completely done, raise your hand. I don't know. I can go either way on that, but I don't want to interrupt each other.
I like it. I think
Yeah.
it's more cordial that way instead of like going around the horn,
Right.
going around a
Yeah,
horn.
I like a dialogue.
Plus, I like interrupting Greg.
Yeah,
I
right.
do too.
I like
Me and Peter
interrupting
always don't
Fred.
like this lady.
Let me ask a question, and you'll be honest, I know you will, but do people get bummed out if they're interrupted? Well,
No.
I know, I agree. I mean, if
As
somebody,
do a
long
lot
as you
of it,
get to pick up where you left off
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
continue.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
I want to say something positive, which I know we all agree on. There's a lot of, I mean, I think this is a great council, and we disagree on a lot of stuff, or share of stuff, but we don't personalize it, and that, I mean, that's
Yeah, it's always a
really,
share.
yeah.
That's exactly right, and
Yeah.
that's well said. That's very well said.
What we could do though is have Jose, or ask him, give us all clickers.
Yeah, we
And
have
we'll
to.
put a cease on the timer.
Put muzzle
All right,
on
all
you,
right,
Fred,
girl.
when you're-
Fred, it's beeping.
Fred,
You know-
shut your microphone off, Fred.
There you go.
You know, Collier Commission, I believe they have something like they hit, and that's how they're recognized.
Oh, really?
Is it?
I'm
Cape
pretty
Coral,
sure.
too.
Do they?
On the
They-
NPO.
they do what?
That's what those buttons are in front of them.
Oh, is that? No, I
You
didn't
push
know.
a
Nobody
button and
told
then
me
you're
that.
recognized?
Well, it tells the person that's running the meeting who goes next and
Oh,
and
who
who
goes
wants to
next.
talk.
Yeah, that's a little
Be-
stilted.
Because they have a
Yeah.
much wider dais and it's
That's a
hard
little
to see
stilted,
everybody.
yeah.
Well, I
it's-
think because if we could, like, this is good to have a dialogue because we're all so close to each other, but when you're up there, those of us on the end, we can't
It's a long
get
way
anybody
across.
else's attention.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
No
I'm
worries.
going to let you sit
We
on
got
it.
nothing.
I want
Doesn't
somebody-
bother me.
I've only ever had to move one seat.
Laura, we don't have a problem with that.
I want somebody to sit on the end, not, because that is the worst.
We ought to do
seat.
that every once in a
Not
while.
only
Mix
you
up the
freeze
seats.
to
All right, we'll
death,
swap seats.
the air,
That's
there's like an
bad
air
feng shui.
thing. You can't hear anything down there because
really?
there's like this Gail that's over there about it.
And I don't know what it
I don't
is
know if I
about the
should be
color.
offended by that when you're talking.
Yeah, right. But if you look at the screen,
It's the wind.
I don't know how many of you
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
watch
yeah.
the
Yeah, I
monitor. You look, you and Greg look pretty tan. I look pale as a ghost. I mean, well, the way
Yeah,
the
it's
light
the
is
light.
too, it's
Oh,
kind
it's
of
the
funny.
light.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of different how we look. Fred, you look washed out on the, you
And
know.
my problem with that
Maybe you need
is,
more makeup.
Well, yeah, but no. But it's, so something
We have a
about the
makeup
lights,
person.
we all look kind of
Yeah.
different.
my problem with the
different cameras, too.
cameras are,
And different cameras, right,
is
right.
that I have,
It's delayed.
for whatever reason,
Right,
I don't
I
know
look
if
orange.
it's out of
Like an
it is
respect or
delayed.
whatever, I like to look at somebody when
Yeah, I
I'm
do
talking
too.
to them.
Right.
But then I catch it out of the corner of my eye that I'm looking at the mayor, and I'm not looking at the camera, so everybody's looking at this side of my face, or the same thing. If I'm turning in to talk to Amy, and I just don't want to
No,
offend
I
anybody,
like
but
to-
that's
Don't
what
worry,
it
nobody's
is.
Yeah,
watching.
right.
Not
We're
a
shut out of
subdivision.
Pelican Landing and
Yeah,
Bonita
shut out of
Bay,
Bonita
and,
Bay.
you know.
Okay.
Anyhow,
So anyway.
No, any other suggestions there, gang? I think we're on to some really good stuff there.
Yeah.
Okay. Improved information transfer, we have kind of talked about this,
Yes.
but let's
Yeah.
read it here. Noticed information gathering meetings of 2 or more council members for information gathering with or without staff, but recorded. And I know you, Amy, and Fred have done this recently.
And we did it originally with the Everglades Wonder Garden with Peter and I did that.
Mhm.
And I personally found that very beneficial for me to understand a specific problem. And it gave us an opportunity to interchange. We did it legally. We said everything we wanted to say out in the open. And then we could come back to council and said, look, we did a very in-depth investigation into this particular concept, and then share the information. That way, we all don't have to do all our own investigation, but it helps to have a partner in running through ideas. So I like that very much.
and everybody's welcome.
And everybody's welcome, and we could have everybody do it, but we could, if we have at least 2 people doing it, then, you know, it's helpful, as long as we report back to the council.
Right.
So
We can do an email to each other, factually, we found this.
Right.
Right?
This is
So-
what we talked about, blah, 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 and we give like a report. So I like that. And I do think that the more information we could transfer to each other, the easier our decisions and the less discussion we're going to have at the council meeting. So all these preliminary explorations, I think in the long run will help. But we have to do it and still maintain the sunshine law. And if we do that, we notice it and it's recorded, and anybody, even if they can't come, they could listen to the recording and exactly what we said, so.
Yeah, because I like to understand the reason why you got to.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think this is why we have this long discussion at the council, because if someone has a different opinion than me, I don't want to just know that they have a different opinion. I want to sort of get their thinking, you know, because I want to explore my own thinking about that, and I think that's why it's helpful. And I do think if we did this on like a team basis, after we did this eventually, we begin to understand what makes everybody tick, and in the long run, that helps in decision-making, you know? Whereas here, we're kind of operating in the dark, because we know each other, but yet we don't, you know, we can't talk to each other, so.
Nope, very good point. Council, anything else on that point?
Nope.
Narrowly focused on previously agreed upon topics. Amy, do you want to expand on that at
Well,
all?
all
or-
I can say is that these meetings should be something that we want to know if the council wants to know information about. And we shouldn't just get together and talk about, dream something up. It's
Right.
something that the council, like for example, when we did the performance evaluations, Fred and I said, we want to have a meeting on this, and the council said, oh yeah, do it. We didn't just go off and do it. And then we'd have to tell it, because we want to invite everybody, whoever is orchestrating that should offer anybody the opportunity to participate if they wanted to. So that's why we have to talk about the topic before we do the
And you guys did a
meeting.
nice job on that. I mean,
Right.
And we couldn't, I mean, we got 7 people
We have
sitting
to
around.
do it again now.
Yeah.
Well, we need to
We need to update it.
because I know when some of the stuff didn't quite work on a couple of
Correct.
cases, and we need to go back and have at
But
least
anyway,
a
I mean,
follow-up
there'll be-
meeting.
So I do think that there'll be other, certainly when we get off on some of these objectives, there might be some specific thing that we want more information about, that we would want to do that.
Right.
And just to continue on here, I like to hear we try to do this, but we're now liaisons to various committee members, each of us, and I would like to know, when you go to your meetings, what was said. Just give a little five-sentence summary of what you did, so we know what's happening when we go to the meetings. It's extra work for us, but for me, it would be important.
Well, so we could do that by email, though, correct?
You could do it, but yeah, you
Right?
could also do it.
Factually-
We don't even have to talk about it. That's it.
No,
I
or
think
is
we
that
better
not
get
sunshine law?
some, you know, at some point here, some good legal advice on, the fact is, if it's fact, you know, in other words, I saw an accident out in the street, I want you all to know that. That's totally okay. Can't respond and say,
No,
well,
right.
why did it happen? Should we fix something? No, you gotta wait here till we fix it. All right? But I think at some point here, we should get some clear parameters on that.
But we could actually...
I know what I have in my mind, because I've read the whole thing, you know, the sunshine, the Attorney General sunshine
Yeah.
thing, but, you know, I'm not acting as a lawyer here.
Yeah, but
We
Right.
could also just write a short five-sentence report, and then we could be accumulated with Arlene, and we could provide a written material at our council meeting. I mean, these things are not urgent. I mean, we don't have to get the information out right away when we're reporting on committee meetings. So that'd be another way to do it, and then we wouldn't, I don't see how that would be a problem at all, right?
Previously, some of the council members would give a quick synopsis of the meeting and say to expect that, for example, Councilman Slacka would give a report of veterans, expect we're coming at the next meeting with a Memorial Day request, or the VFW is going to bring this request. So it's just sort of a preparatory thing that the next meeting you're going to have a green sheet or an item on it. And that's always something you can do under your council member items to keep, just so that it's already in everyone's mind that that's coming forward.
Do the individual committees, I know that there's minutes recorded, but do they type them out?
Yes, they're recorded, and then there's minutes as well.
Well, I knew they were recorded, I just didn't know, I just never seen
A lot of
minutes.
public places is almost verbatim. Depends on the committee, yeah.
I'm just saying, maybe that's the way to do it, is just have the committees submit the minutes afterwards.
Minutes, yeah, we could
Yeah.
do that. And then again, I don't know if anyone else is interested, but I'm interested in what happens in other people's district. You know, sometimes we have emails about issues. You know, we usually get the emails about the problems, but sometimes things happen, and they're, to me, if we're having a problem in one district, I think it's part of our understanding of what's happening in the city, so we could maybe have council members talk about specific things that they, even if they just list them, even if they don't give the resolution. But I'm interested about that, but maybe not other people aren't.
Makes sense. Okay.
Anything else here, Amy? I mean, there's a lot of other,
I mean, it comes under the thing about, let's share our information as best we can with the things that we're aware of, so that we all know what's happening.
great.
Yeah.
Dynamite,
Excellent.
dynamite.
Okay.
Any other random miscellaneous thoughts in this area, gang? Okay. Dynamite, okay, what's our next one? Discussion of additional suggestions offered by mayor and council members.
No, well, let's see. Those are things that I had gotten from the performance evaluations. But again, getting back, I'm still over here on this other part. There are topics, like under general discussion topics, we talked about government light.
Right.
I do think that, you know, at some point we should discuss philosophical concepts. And at some point we'll have to do the budget. We've mentioned this many times about the ex parte impact, well, both communications. And again, some people want to do it and some people don't. I sort of would like to know what the discussion was about, even though I don't participate in that, because I have some concerns that there are sort of subtle negotiations that are going on between council people and the developer, because when I have participated in that, I got the feeling that's what was happening, that the developers or the applicant was trying to negotiate with me on an individual basis, and I didn't feel comfortable doing that. If everybody else likes to do that, I'd like to know what the discussion was, if there's been any adjustments to the application as a result of this communication, and that's, again, a personal need, so we can talk about that or not.
I think Fred suggested something at the workshop, which was to do it, allow ex parte, but to do it with staff. And I thought that made a lot of sense.
So then the staff would know what goes on,
Yeah.
and then it'd be fine.
Yeah, I think that's fine, and I don't have a problem. I do agree with you. I don't think that there should be any negotiation, because then you're gonna have seven different,
Right.
hey, I want the hall to be this wide. I want
Exactly.
the building height to be
Right.
this side. I want the color to be that side.
Yeah,
Where it should
exactly.
just be, my opinion of it is X. I think it's too big.
Yeah, I mean, I do them often, and
Right.
it's never a negotiation. The whole point is they're coming to council because they want something different than what they're allowed.
Right.
So they're trying to get an idea of, is there gonna be at least 4 of us that are gonna allow them to do that? So if they meet with a number of us and we're all like, no, I couldn't be for that. You know, like if they say they wanna go to 90 feet high or something, it's like, nah, I can't support that. So then, well, one thing was the Wawa. I know I did an ex parte on that. You know, they wanted to put a Wawa in on Beach Road, and then nothing ever materialized. So my assumption is they talked to enough people to realize that there's not enough support for them to come to council, because it costs a lot of money for them to come in with everybody they need to have, their engineers and all that. So to them, it just makes sense to have a short, you know, half-hour meeting, you know, with each of us individually. Is there going to be support for that, not support for that, and then they know if they need to go forward or not.
So I agree with that. I understand that conceptually. My issue with it is we're not getting the input from community development.
Well, I usually have community
As
development
well,
with me.
there's a lot of confusion, and so my concern about it is everybody in good faith who talks, and then basically the minds are made up, and then we may or may not hear from community development about actual issues, and then people are bought in.
Well, and that's
as human
usually what
beings.
the meeting is. They're saying, I want to do this, and then community development's there with me saying, well, this is why it's that way. And then, so I kind of get both sides
So
of
you
it
always
there.
meet with community development?
Almost always, yeah.
And then it goes back to what Fred had said before,
Yeah.
meet with staff
Meet with staff.
and/or community development.
I mean, I've had, well,
Go
let me
ahead.
make a quick comment about community development. I talked to John a lot about concept, whatever, but, you know, we had a whole presentation on downtown. I think we might have had 2. We had a workshop on downtown. We had a workshop on density, all right? And the entire workshop on density, and this is not about anybody's project, all right? The entire workshop on density was mention of what is 20, I remember Amy, what does 20 look like? What does 15 look like? What does 6.8 look like for density, all right? Well, we had on the previous council a density thing down there, which was almost in excess of 50.
48.
Yeah, yeah. And I went through the math with John the other day, and it could have been 70. So something is like, and it goes to Laura's point about it's a bit of structural chaos here. And I'm not knocking John and his group, but it's a bit of structural chaos. So, you know, we have those 2005 maps that show it's in the comp plan, 20 bonus. It's actually never 20. It's 10 and 5, 15 and 5, and then I'm going through some math with John now. I don't want to spend everybody's time on it, but it's actually a humongous amount of density that conceivably could be improved down there, and no one knows it. No one knows it. So I think community development's got to take its game up, and they're more than capable of doing it and advising us. So.
Okay, and just the number 7, I think, I know that's in our charter that we're basically supposed to direct policy and monitor the performance of the city staff, and we have to be careful that we don't direct, we don't get involved with managing the city, because that's not our job. We don't manage the city, the staff manages the city, but we manage the managers, basically, and we direct policy. So
Yep.
I think that that's important, that we remember that, and if we go too far astray, I think we're going to put undue burden on the staff. And now we're here. So here, I don't know if you want to go over this at all, for
Good.
number D. The only one I think it would be nice to have a report on what I call the areas of concern report. It's all nice to have everything's wonderful and we're doing all these great things. But if there are any issues that the staff is concerned about, I think I'd like to know what those are.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else looked through that. I don't think we covered most of these things.
Well, it kind of fits into what you said earlier, list of where we are in a project, and then where are there problems that would be covered in that.
Or a problem that we're not even thinking about. That's really
Or a
something that,
problem that's not project-specific, but
right.
city staff or citywide
Yeah.
issue or something.
I can't think of an example, but something that is not on our radar, or that the staff is aware of that we're not really,
Right.
we really haven't talked about. Okay. That's it. Sorry it was so long.
No, my goodness gracious, phenomenal.
Yes.
Council, other thoughts? Fred, you talked out?
No, I would, here's my take on downtown. I think what happened was, I forget how many years ago it was, but there was a formal adoption of a whole bunch of new stuff on old downtown where you could grant bonus densities to projects for different reasons. Some of it, I think you could give them a density if they contributed something to art in public places. And I think what happened was that nobody actually said, well, what happens if I take a project and they get almost everything, every possible density increase you could get? I think the key thing to really slow a lot of this stuff down is anytime somebody's going to be going above the standard densities that we have in our table, they got to have 100% of the parking on the site, or they got to have a 99-year lease controlling the parking that they are short on their site. Because old downtown, the one thing that I think anybody would have to agree with is we're not flush with excess parking spaces down there. So we need to make sure that that's really regulated. I think if you regulate the parking, doesn't mean they have to have it on their site, but they got to have it under control. Because we had this thing that, oh, you could have a valet service on that one. I think that Peter's talking about the 48. They were going to have a valet that was going to take, and you could also have end-to-end parking on your lot, which requires valet, and then valet off the site. And that's how they handle that parking.
But what bothers me about that one project is that, I don't know, that must be like an acre or something, and then they was approved 48 units. That's
But
the
I'm telling you,
maximum.
some of the ways it got approved.
But the maximum that was allowed, that is allowed by the tables, is 15 plus 20. So I don't
Plus
know.
5.
Plus 5. So it comes out to 20. So I don't know how you get to 48 there.
They
There's
got
no elevators, too.
No
No,
elevators.
it's not that
No,
way.
that, no.
Yeah.
They had elevators in longitude, but that troubles me because, I mean, maybe we want 48 per acre, but I didn't think that's what it said in the comprehensive plan.
but Amy, we didn't approve that.
No, I don't care whether we approved it. How did it happen is what, and why, somebody did a calculation.
Well, if you take care of the parking, it'll kind of take care of a lot of the
No,
problems.
I don't think parking would solve that. I think you
Yes,
have
it will, because you can only put so much parking on the ground.
John, do you want to shed some light
Oh,
on
boy,
that, or
we're
would
gonna
you?
go, this,
Well, I was
we're gonna
gonna
open a door
No,
here.
I
No, I
understand.
understand.
No, but, but I.
All right, you know what? Yeah, all right, forget it.
No, no.
Laurie, you're up next. We're going around.
Yeah, we're gonna open a
I
door.
say we're all done.
Yeah.
Okay, we're done.
Greg?
No, I'm fine.
You're good?
I
Pete?
apologize.
Yeah, just one quick thing unrelated, which is, if everybody's all right with this, I'm going to bring back a have some chats with Arlene, bring back some suggestions to the next council meeting about an interim adjustment for the interim manager, considering the additional responsibilities. And Arlene and I are talking about that.
Okay, good.
Excellent.
Amy?
No, I'm good, and thank you for indulging me and being
Oh, great
so-
job, Amy.
Yeah, thank you.
And let's make beautiful
One
music
more item.
together.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry, what else do we have to do?
One more item.
Members of the oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry, the last item was a quick update on, at the last council meeting, you asked us to bring back some ideas of proposals to assist with 041 and fast tracking that. John and I had a conference call with DPZ, And we do have a suggestion. We have unfortunately not been able to continue to work through the process with Special Counsel David Thierry because he was preparing for trial, and right now he's in trial, but will be working with us towards the end of the week about reconciling the comprehensive plan with land development code. But if you previously recall, in the DPC contract, you had what was called a demonstration project, and there were some different ideas that floated around, and they had done some preliminary work on it. That item was $40,000. They did some mapping, GIS, and communications. There is $30,000 that they did not utilize. We've talked to them about the possibility of a total price of $65,000, where we could credit $30,000 from the existing contract and then allocate an additional $35,000. To look at a form-based code, it would be very lean initial work at it. They would be able to come on June 20th, number one, to do the revise of Vinny Beach Road presentation to you all, but to kick off this portion of the project. We've already provided them a copy of the white paper, the map, and Deputy Mayor O'Flynn's green sheet of outlining some of the issues that we're looking at. And it would be looking at a half square mile, 320 plus or minus acres of the downtown, which is the overlay district, looking at a transect and providing a draft model code and bringing us through a permission to advertise. At that point, staff would take it forward with with all the adopting ordinances, and they would be continuing to guide us. But it would be a first step. They would recommend a deeper dive in the future, but that would be a conversation we'd have later on. But this would be looking at the transect, looking at the mapping, and a pilot code, and bringing us to a permission to advertise. And from there, we could see what other further recommendations they had, and that would be the direction of council after that. But the total project cost would be $65,000, with us being able to use a credit of $30,000 from the existing contract. If this is council's pleasure, this is a voting item. You could vote on this tonight, and we could have a change order for the contract at your first meeting in June, and they would be kicking off in the second meeting in June.
I would move to do that.
Second.
Has been a motion and a second and a third. Discussion?
Yeah, Arlene, go through the schedule again. I know they would have their workshop somewhere after the 20th or thereabouts.
So they would be here on site for the June 20th meeting. Number one, they're going to be doing their Bonita Beach Road wrap-up
Right.
and presentation, but that would also be the kickoff of the downtown
Right.
project for them. We have not set when they'll come back in the summer, but that would be the kickoff, and they continue working through the summer and bringing us back a draft form-based code to move forward with, and then we would be able to move forward with adoption.
And would they coordinate a little bit with Theriac because they
Oh,
have...
absolutely. No, as soon as Theriac's available this week, at the end of the week, it has to be coordinated with the comprehensive plan element and the code together, so they would have to work together.
Last question, do we have the money? I think we do, but I want to make sure.
I think we can allocate the $35,000 as long as we're allocating the 30 out of the original contract. So
Yeah.
we'll work with finance to look at the $35,000.
Okay.
The only, so this is looking at doing the form-based code. Well, you just kind of brought it up that we don't know what we're kind of looking at density. You know, maybe the 48 is what we need down there. So, I mean, is it kind of premature having them do the form-based code before we say what we want the density to be down there? Or is that something that they would look at too?
No, because if you want 20-story buildings, they can do a form-based code for that.
Well, obviously, we don't want 20-story buildings, but...
Sorry.
But I mean, the problem with density is it's based on units, and, you know, they're trying to get so much money out of the thing, so if they base it on units, they just do bigger units, where kind of coming, you know, if we want workforce housing, things like that, we want smaller units on site.
So that would work.
So, I mean, really, they would need more density in order to have more, smaller units to do workforce housing.
I don't want to do the whole thing tonight, but that would work, because John will tell you that in that box created by the form-based code, you'd have smaller square foot apartments.
So
which would
we'd
give you
be
more
getting
density.
away from unit.
It would give you more density. That would accommodate exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, because right now, I think we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot saying you can only do 15 or 20 units. So in order to make a project work, they're doing bigger units that are going to have to sell for $500,000 for a unit, where that's going to be unaffordable for the work workforce housing that we're looking to do, so.
Well, the only problem I have with that, and we should have another discussion of this, is that's what's already in the comprehensive plan.
Right.
And what you're saying is not I mean, unless I'm reading it wrong.
Not in there.
That's what it says. And we just went through the ear thing, and nobody said, let's have more density downtown. That didn't come out of all of the discussions. So if there's a whole reason to do something more than whatever they say, then we need to have a completely different discussion. My problem is that, you know how rigid I am, and I like following the rules. I want the rules to be followed. And if the rules are wrong, then of course we can change them, and that's basically what we do from time to time. But I don't see how that's, I mean, it's so different. It's not even like 30, it's like 48. It's almost twice what it, you know, what it would be. So I have a problem with that.
I agree with that. I mean, we have a comp plan which says something, so if we want to change it, we should have the discussion.
Yeah.
Or if we want to go to a standard that says as long as you can find a parking spot, you can
Right.
build whatever you want, we should have a discussion. I don't agree with that, but not tonight.
Yeah, okay,
You know.
I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're not going down the road and then we can't really easily change it later, so. If it is something that while we're doing this exercise, it comes across, maybe we do need more density down there, it's something
Oh,
that
fair point.
could be put in, so.
Yeah, I think that's,
Well,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming that they will really look at parking, because I'm telling you, parking controls a lot more about what you can do than you guys have realized.
Just put a 20-story parking
Yeah, so,
garage.
yeah.
No, but even if you have 20, 30 stories, you gotta have.
No, I said 20-story parking garage.
Oh, parking,
20-story parking.
we gotta have
Got it all
we have a
covered.
form-based
There-
code. for
There's
parking.
been a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion?
No.
No.
Roll call, please.
Councilman DeWitt,
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr,
Aye.
Mayor Simmons,
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn,
Aye.
Councilman Gibson,
Aye.
Councilman Forbes,
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba.
Aye.
Okay, great. Arlene, anything else? Okay, great. Now public comment.
Good job.
Councilman, how are you?
I'm fine. Bill Lockhart from, let's see, 13720 Tunbridge
Ah.
Road, 34135-239-947-8893, and just two comments.
social?
Two comments. One for,
No, don't give your social.
Okay. I don't, you know, I've enjoyed being here. I do want to comment on a couple things in terms of money. As you know, you get a monthly report on impact fees. We're approximately over $1 million ahead of last year, and I know that only can be used for certain things, but also the general fund revenue, again this year, when it ends in September, you will have in your general fund somewhere between 500,000 and maybe 700,000 in additional revenue in the general fund. That's all I have to say. You guys are doing a great job, and I miss it to a point, but
But you look better than you ever have, so you're tanned, rested, and relaxed.
I think the staff all wants to get out of here, and I don't blame them, but I gotta get home, I got a date.
Great, all right, great. Take care. Great to see you, Bill. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you.